It is live. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Resident Evil 2 episodic discussion. We will be talking about the things that we want in the Resident Evil 2 remake, but first, I would like to introduce my guest again, Mr. Bio Devil Dom. Introduce yourself.
How's it going tonight, guys? Good to be back here and do another episodic discussion, and can't wait to talk about Resident Evil 2 Remake.
I feel the same sentiments exactly. Mr. Doc Stalkers, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm just here for the Claire sandwiches.
But the Jill sandwiches are better.
Alright, put that sandwich down so we can introduce Mr. Brian Word. Introduce yourself, good sir.
What up, what up? It's Brian Word, aka Silver Angel 627, aka the Milk Dud Dictionary Artist. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
And last but not least, we have Mr. Brendan, Mr. Arcane Magic. Introduce yourself, good sir.
Blah blah blah, Resident Evil, blah blah blah, RE2, blah blah blah, George Butt's the best one, and I'm glad to be back.
And he got his perverted introduction out of the way, so I guess we can jump into this fresh and say, question number one, what is your experience with the original Resident Evil 2? I'm going to keep some of my answers brief. I said that, my experience with the original Resident Evil 2 was as a kid. I was scared shitless of Resident Evil 2, and I was forbidden to play it for a long time. Until I got older is when I got more into the series. I think the first game that I played through all the way was Code Veronica, but I went back and purchased Resident Evil 2 off the PSN store, and I liked it ever since. I think that so far I hold it in high regard as to what the series maintains in terms of quality, and I still think the worst is Resident Evil 6. So, shots fired. So, who wants to go next?
Alright, I guess I'll go next.
I'll go next.
In the
Go ahead, Dom.
So in the original recording that we did, I said that I started off with 5 and I pretty much went backwards. So eventually I made my way to 2, and just like Ren, I downloaded the digital version and essentially ended up liking the classic games more than I liked the more modern games in terms of how the story and stuff like that went. So that's my experience with 2.
Alright, so who else is going next?
I'll go next. Just make it quick.
Alright.
Yeah, my first experience with RE2 is back in 2014, October 13th. Yeah, I have it. Still had the original download here on my PS3, so I could tell you exactly when I got it. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it though. But I still think RE3 is better for different reasons. But this is not about RE3. It's about RE2.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that though.
So,
You know what's ironic?
what?
Okay, so my experience with Resident Evil 2 is a little bit less, because the first time I saw it was when my cousin, 4 years older than me, he had the game. And like Ren, it scared me to death, because I think that was literally my first time ever actually knowing what zombies were, and it stayed with me ever since. I can play the game, I can play the Resident Evil games with zombies now, at the very least. I got into Resident Evil 4, got 5 and 6. Personally, I think a mix of the older games with the RE4 style, or at least RE4 with a little bit of 6 can work. That's just me.
So, I think, Doc Stalkers, what is your experience with Resident Evil 2?
Basically, me and my brother played it when we were kids, and we would kind of take turns with it. He'd play it for a while, then I would. I thought it was a good game. Only real enemy that kind of got under my skin was Mr. X, just because he's so, just that tall, imposing type of villain that you really don't want to mess with.
Mr. X hype.
And he seems like the only thing that seems remotely smart in a world of everything that's trying to kill you.
Well, I give some credit. I mean, I know it's another story, but, I mean, Nemesis was also kind of smart if you ask me. It always seems to be the tyrants. The other monsters seem to be cannon fodder, but, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I guess we can move on to question number 2, which is we talked a little bit about other titles prior to Resident Evil 2's official release. The first being Biohazard Dash, a game that was meant to be the original sequel to Resident Evil before being cancelled due to the appeal of Resident Evil 2's concept. The second being a demo of Resident Evil 2 that most fans dub as 1.5. Do you think that Capcom should go back to those concepts or reuse them for the Resident Evil 2 remake? My answer is quite obviously yes. I think that they should because, they could use some new level designs for Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's because that Remake 1 had it where you can go to new areas and you can explore new things. And they didn't have that in the original, so they could expand on those areas. And they could also maybe make something akin to the effect of you go more outside of the city limits. I don't know how far they're going to do that, but I think that would be interesting to see, considering the fact that, they have these old haunts that you can explore. Maybe like a cabin in the woods or something like that. That would create some scary atmosphere. So
to kind of go off of that, I would say that that would be a great way to maybe like experiment for an RE3 remake, considering that that's more in the city rather than just the police station. So, it would definitely work. And especially with like a lot of the concepts that were in like Biohazard Dash and 1.5, like there was like shooting ranges in the Biohazard 1.5. There was also a hallway with like cells, and the zombies would like pop up and try to reach through the prison bars to try to get the player and whatnot. So interesting concepts like that would be pretty cool to see.
yeah, and maybe like even if they don't do that, maybe if they do save it for an RA3 remake, maybe they could open the city up just a little bit more so you can explore, and maybe you can even see some areas from Resident Evil 3, like the fountain, for instance. But again, I do think that they should save some concepts, but they should open up the city if they aren't going to go full on bonkers with it.
Yeah. I would say that as far as like the concepts go, like I know some of them ended up being like reused for the Outbreak games, like the zombies with like the plants going through like their faces and their backs and whatnot. So it might be an interesting thing to maybe implement those into the remake, just because they're in the Outbreak games. And definitely like anything that like any of the areas and some of the enemies and maybe rooms that were cut from both 1.5 and Biohazard Dash.
What do you think of this, Brendan?
Not much to say though, but I agree with everything you're saying. Like at least have the museum look more like a police station. At least have it modified and return some unique levels from Biohazard Dash. And what else? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
I got a legit question. Where the fuck is the bathrooms? Seriously? How is someone supposed to take a piss?
Yeah, even if they just had one, it would make more sense than having none. So I think
I think the better question is, would you really need them? Because I'm pretty sure everybody here has seen Zombieland.
True.
Oh God.
I have not seen it, so I mean,
Bruh.
if you describe something, and if it's spoilers, I'm just letting people know this is a spoiler cast. So don't go after my head. Go after Mr. Words.
Okay, well, put it this way. Going in the bathroom in a zombie apocalypse is one of the worst ideas. That's all you need to know.
All right, then. So what were you saying, Dom?
I was just gonna say that because like Biohazard Dash has a lot of concept art floating around on the internet. I'm sure you can find it. So I mean, they could take some of those, like maybe some of the rooms for like that lead up into the lab, perhaps. I think there's also like a classroom-looking area that they could maybe implement into the police station, because obviously the police are going to be training in your recruits and whatnot. So it kind of makes sense to have something like that or a similar room to that. And as far as like 1.5 goes, like there's a rooftop you never get to go to in the game, in the official RE2, and then, like I said earlier, like the prison cells with the zombies, and definitely the shooting range would be pretty cool to see.
I definitely agree with this. Did you have anything to say on this, Darkstalkers?
No, nothing.
Alright. Let's move on to... Get the fuck out of my way, advertisement. Let's go on to question number 3. The Resident Evil remake on GameCube, now on PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PC, added in new rooms and a new side story that went along with the main game. Do you think that the Resident Evil 2 remake should strive to do the same? Yes.
Yes.
I think you brought that up earlier too, Ren. When we were talking about question 2, like, I think it would just be cool just to see, like, even if it's something small, like it was in Resident Evil Remake, where you got like some of these new rooms and you got like this little subplot with like Lisa Trevor. I think it would be interesting to see, because you can probably expand the story with that, especially now that the remake and RE0 are considered canon, whereas the original RE0 that was on N64 before it got changed to the GameCube version, and as well as the PS1 version of Resident Evil 1 are no longer considered canon.
There is one thing I myself would like to see, and that's, you know, Leon, Claire, Jill, and Carlos haven't met up, because I think there was something at the end of Resident Evil 3 where it was like, they showed that Jill might have met Leon, so now she knows about him too, and it's not just Chris.
Really? When did this happen? I don't remember this.
It's something that happens at the end of the cutscenes. I just can't remember what exactly it was. It's like,
you're talking about the epilogues, right? Where they tell you like a brief description as to what happens with each of the characters and what goes on in the story afterwards. Like, for example, Jill finds out that Chris is somewhere in hiding. She was supposed to meet up with him afterwards and meet up with the other
STARS
members.
She finds his knife in the ground. I remember that much. Yeah.
So, like, and there's like another one where like Claire finds out that Chris is gone, and now she's looking for him too. Like, everybody's looking for Chris, and then there's another one where like you know, spoiler alert, Leon gets found with Sherry, and then that's how they explain how Leon even has his government job. Moving on from 3 to 4.
Yeah, because like it's a simple fact that they're the 4. Or there's some of the 4 who did survive the whole thing at the end of the day. So it's like, why wouldn't they have met each other, you know?
Well, technically speaking, Chris was never in Raccoon City.
Well, not Chris, but,
you know. But yeah, we never hear from Carlos ever again either, so yeah.
One of the characters that they could have done something with, but they didn't.
Yeah, like he could have became a BSAA member.
Exactly.
What did I miss?
You missed question number 3.
Number 3.
Which was basically the Resident Evil remake on GameCube added in new areas and a side story. Do you think that remake should do the same?
Yes, include hunting story as a full-fledged.
Yeah. There's plenty of things they could do, like maybe, you know,
have some
also,
guys do Ada's.
Ada's.
Yeah, like Ada's.
Oh yeah, Ada.
Umbrella Chronicles show what happened to Ada afterwards, so they could implement that into the game.
Yeah. Oh, you mean that part where she escapes the city?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, and not just something that was for Umbrella Chronicles, because it's like, because let's be honest, Ada being one of the key figures in Resident Evil, just like some of the other main characters, is like, how could they not?
Yeah.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. Like, if they managed to just implement those scenarios from Umbrella Chronicles and put it in like the full-fledged game to where you can play these side stories, I think that would make the replay value just boost up, because then you have all this stuff that's available from the core package that you can go back and replay over and over again. It maybe they can implement some of the stuff like rankings or time attack, as I said in the previous recording, that might suit the players that are into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And not just as DLC.
Please, no DLC. Capcom, I swear, if you're listening to this, please don't gouge me for this. I will hunt you down and fight you on the side of the street.
Sorry, Tokyo, let's go.
Yeah.
So, anyone else have any opinions on this?
Yeah, we can move on.
All right. What about you, Darkstalkers? Nothing.
He said he
No.
didn't want.
All right, cool. So moving on. Should they add Crimson Heads in the Resident Evil 2 remake? To add on to this, would you like to see any other type of enemy variations on the Crimson Heads, or would you like for them to apply a new mechanic to other enemy types?
Can I go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as zombies goes, they should be Crimson Heads. As far as other enemies goes, each of them should have at least one unique transformation. Like, for example, Lickers could turn into some, like, maybe a bigger form of themselves, or maybe a four-arm variant
So we're
of
using
Lickers.
the Resident Evil movie style now. Is that what's happening?
Well, might as well take something that's bad and turn it good.
You right.
Well, to actually add on to that portion, there is concept art from, like, I think RE0 where they were supposed to have like a liquor variant, and then Devil May Cry was also supposed to have a liquor variant at one point too, because it was going to be a Resident Evil game. So maybe they can go back to those concepts as well.
Yeah, it's always like I said last time, it's always a possibility of them going back, considering that Resident Evil 6 did the same philosophy of reusing assets that they didn't use in Resident Evil 5 and some of the other games, and bringing them back for this game while adding new twist on them. I think that might be a great thing to do, considering they can pull from a wealth of things like Biohazard 1.5, for example, where a lot of the game we probably didn't even see in Resident Evil 2. We just saw like portions. So they can take a lot of stuff back from there, like the shooting range, like Dom said.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking on this, not only add in the Crimson Heads, but add a more punishing mechanic to where if you, when you've reached the point where you've encountered William Birkin, that the zombies kind of mutate further, being affected by him, affected by him trying to kind of
Mate with his daughter. Go ahead and
Yeah.
say it.
There you go.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
well, you know how he's trying
Yeah,
to
he wants-
propagate the. So I
Like,
guess
we
yeah.
we all know what
Never
happens
mind.
in this story. Let's not sugarcoat it.
No. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a spoiler cast, so I mean, if you haven't played Resident Evil 2 at this point, which I don't know why you haven't, then you might want to click off this video immediately. So
At least watch a playthrough.
yeah, watch a playthrough, do something. But yeah, he consummates with his daughter, and then he puts a G embryo inside of her. So what Dark is trying to say is, what if that might happen to other enemies? I think that Brandon argued before that they have a sort of family bond, so that's the reason why he only does that to her and it doesn't happen to anyone else. And it seems that if someone is infected, like the chief for example, then it rejects it and kills them. Because I think the chief, what happened to him was he ate one of the G monsters, or the babies, and then he just
Yep.
got sliced in half by it.
Yep.
That's what also happened to that reporter. I
Ben.
forget his name.
Ben.
Yeah, Ben.
Ben.
You know, that also happens to him where he splits open, and he even says that like he feels like his body is burning before he gets split open.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
assume maybe have some host to where they actually accept the monster. Like, I mean, it's not far-fetched for them to pull something out of their ass with this one, considering the fact that they retconned Resident Evil 1 plenty of times with that remake.
I would say that as far as like Crimson Heads go, yes, I'd like to see them back. I've even thought about like what if that could work for like maybe the dogs in the game, like maybe not have it happen for every dog in that game, but perhaps like a 1 in 5 chance where it can happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause,
where
like-
there's
Yeah, because like when the enemies in RE5 and RE6 mutate and you got like 2, maybe even 3 all at once, it's like that's too much.
yeah, no, definitely so where it can be a challenge, but not where it's like, you know, unfair to the player. I think it should be like a 1 in 5 chance, and really only the one can be in the room, although others can break in if, kind of how like the remake had that mechanic where like some of the zombies and hunters can break down the doors, saving you like the loading times basically. Like maybe that mechanic could apply in this game as well if they had something like that. But just food for thought with that one. As far as like adding in another like variation, I think I agree with what everyone else was saying. Like maybe have something where like either the G virus thing happens or like to kind of continue with what I was saying about what Brandon brought up, have like a different liquor variant that was either originally concept or maybe they can do some of the more enhanced ones that you see later on in the game, the ones that have like that greenish body. Perhaps they can also have like some special ability. Perhaps like maybe they can poison you or something like that.
Hey.
Yep, to add on to that, I think I was saying last time, that would definitely make the liquors in the later parts of the laboratory more vicious if they decide to make their blades and talons poisonous, because then you'll be facing a predicament where, of course, there are going to be blue herbs around, but at the same time, it'll be like, you got to be careful because you don't know if you're few and far between with death. So I think making those liquors poisonous, or maybe if you turn on the machine that weakens them, and then when the other character goes back, the liquors are stronger, that's when it really kicks in the poison effect. So I think that'd be a nice little addition to the gameplay where it makes it harder, but it makes sense for what happens.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's I think you brought up last time when we were recording before, like maybe they can turn a different color.
Yeah, because they're already green.
Maybe
so
like a.
I already
I
suspected the plant might be infected within them. I mean, it's not far-fetched to say that creatures can affect others in this universe, no less.
Yeah, and I think I suggested like maybe like a blue or like a purple color to indicate that these are like poisoned liquors, whereas like the green ones have like the ivy plants on them. I think what would be pretty cool for the ivy ones is like maybe they go back to those Biohazard Dash concepts where like plants were going through like the enemies and they can use like the vines and whatnot. So like perhaps like the liquors can get like a set of vines on their back that they can use to like whip the player as they pass them by, or perhaps they can get some vines going through like their face or their arms and they can use those in different ways.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, that'll make a lot of sense. So moving on to question number 5, should they add the enhanced ammo from Resident Evil 3? And my answer is yes. Yes, they should definitely add that because I mean, it'll be harder because then they have to put in the reloading tool, but I mean, if they can make it work, then I don't see why not. The only thing is it has to be done well, just like it was in the previous game where you add ammunition to it. If they really don't have any variety to stuff like the grenade launcher where you make the freeze rounds, then I will kind of see no point to it if they don't do anything unique with it.
I would say also...
go ahead, sorry.
I would say also add some ammunition that encourages you to give the system a try rather than just saying, no, I'm going to stick with the normal ammo, by perhaps adding ammunition that specifically helps you deal with boss enemies such as Birkin or Mr. X.
Yeah, like maybe they can do properties to certain things where a certain boss is affected with a certain weapon. Like they kind of tried to do this with Remake, but it was kind of hard to tell for certain enemies unless you read the files. And I think maybe that could be critical to help the player because some people might catch on to it, some people might not. So I think if it's critical to examine each part of the game and get these files to help you, it will factor in more to the gameplay itself. So maybe you can find out that Birkin is more weak to spark gunshots or, the shotgun or something like that.
Yeah.
But only for a certain form because he changes like every 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah. Well, I would say that as far as like the enhanced ammo goes, like kind of like what Darkstalkers was saying, like maybe they can drop some for you, like not a whole lot, but just enough to give you a taste of how that ammo works. I also think that as far as that goes, like I don't think there should be any like specific types or anything like that, not like grenade launcher rounds, but maybe the shotgun could perhaps get incendiary rounds, because you do get more powerful shotgun rounds in RE3, but it's only just the one. You don't get like incendiary rounds for it or anything like that. But if considering that Leon never gets a grenade launcher in the game, he could perhaps use something like that.
Yeah, I guess while on that topic, they can also give people new weapons because, I mean, the enhanced ammo is nice, but at the same time, I remember they also put some new techniques into Remake that were pretty interesting, like the defense mechanism, where if like a creature grabs you, you can hit them at the last minute to avoid damage. But it's in limited numbers. Maybe they can do something interesting with Leon, for instance, or maybe Claire, where something tries to grab them and they got new defense items that they can use. I don't know what they can use. Maybe like Leon has a nightstick or something. I don't know.
A nightstick, really?
Yeah.
Well, in Remake, they added the daggers, the tasers, and the flash grenades. And you know those would work, and I think that would also work. But I really wish they would kind of go back to that dodge mechanic that 3 had as well.
Which they kind of implemented in RE6 a little bit, but not quite as well.
You mean like, the parry?
Not the parry. It's like you know, you aim the gun, you press X, A, or on whatever system you're using. You can dodge to the left, right. You could even roll forward or fall back onto your back and then still shoot. But it's like, I don't know. It seems to be a little bit too much.
It's not like RE3 where you can just push them out of the way or anything like that.
Yeah, RE3's dodge was like you had to mash a particular button before they attacked you. Otherwise, you were going to get hit. Or you could just simply... there were these moments in Code Veronica X where the zombies could grab you, but if you tap the button just right, you would avoid the bite. So maybe in a sense they could do something like that, because if they're going back to old school Resident Evil with this one, then maybe the button mashing thing would make more sense than to have the Resident Evil 6 style dodging.
Sorry, my brother's in my room playing Tekken. So what number are we on?
We're on number 5. Should they add enhanced ammo to Resident Evil 3 or not?
And we're kind of diverging a little bit, but
yeah, we are. But you know, I was just explaining that they should put that in there just in case to keep it more oriented to the classic style if they use it. And I think enhanced ammo would work. It's just they had to implement it right, because if it's useless, then there's no point.
Well, to kind of take it back, RE3, the way that they did it was that you had the standard ammunition. Some of it was good, some of it is meh, like the handgun ammo, for example. But once you get the enhanced variation of it, which is kind of a pain to get to begin with, like you can't combine gunpowder, you just have to combine it with the reloading tool. So you can't have like AAA, otherwise it won't speed it up. Unless if they fix that, where it can get sped up for combining the gunpowder. You know, you're kind of forced to do that. But yeah, when you got the enhanced handgun ammo, it really helped. It felt like you were kind of using like a nerfed Magnum, so to speak, because of the power increase you get.
Yeah.
God forbid enhanced Magnum ammo.
Yo, I would hate that.
Okay,
Man, that'd be the most OP gun in the game, confirmed?
You'd be done with that game in 2 hours.
You can't, but you already can though. You can beat RE2 in 2 hours.
Yeah, I beat it.
Make that half an hour then.
Damn. So I guess we can move on to question number 6. Most fans have had arguments about the camera angles of Resident Evil. In Resident Evil 5 Lost in Nightmares, there was a Easter egg that allowed you to play in the classic style. The fan team that Capcom hired for the Resident Evil 2 remake had plans to add in both styles. Do you think that Capcom should keep fixed camera angles and tank controls, remove them, or have them as an option in Remake HD?
Have it
I'll
as an
be-
option.
Yeah.
I meant to
Mine's
have that as
quick.
RE5.
Oops.
That was supposed to be RE. Yeah. Don't know why
Dom, I'm gonna kill you. No, I'm kidding.
that. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
supposed to be RE5, not Remake HD. But yeah.
Can I go first?
Um,
Because I'll make mine real quick. They should
yeah.
just have an option because I'm tired of all this bickering between the two. Now, for preference, I prefer the newer style of camera angles and controls. I could care less if they're gone here or not. But for the people that do care, just have it as an option because I know I won't use them. Unless I don't have a choice, then yes, I will bear through them. Hell, I can still play the other games, no problem.
To me, the more modern style, it can make it to where it's a bit more surprising and a bit more creepy, because you know you can only see what's ahead, not necessarily what's behind you, and that way it's like it can have more of that survival horror feel that 5 and 6 were supposed to have, but didn't quite have.
Yeah. So I would say that as far as both the styles go, like I like both of them. I don't particularly have a bias for either or. If they go with one or the other, it doesn't really matter to me personally. I would prefer for them to go with the fixed camera angles, but if they do go with the over-the-shoulder third person, what really matters the most at this point is that they have the atmosphere and the story of the original. Because I said this in a separate video that they could have the fixed camera angles. That doesn't mean that they can't mess up the story and the atmosphere for this game. And I think that's what a lot of people need to understand, that despite having fixed camera angles, that doesn't necessarily mean you would get classic Resident Evil back. A lot of the people that worked at Capcom when Shinji Mikami was the producer for Resident Evil, it's just not going to happen. So if they can bring in the atmosphere from the original while still maintaining the new style, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, I totally see your point on that one. Yeah, if they, keep in this style and try to make it unique and innovative with what they're working with, then it could create something new and even scarier for the masses. Like, it could be something like Dead Space, for example. Third-person survival horror shooters aren't dead, but they can be refined on and they can work for the modern ages. So if they keep the optional fixed camera angles while building on something that's third-person, that's new, then I think that they will be able to create a hybrid in a sense. If they keep it optional for the people who like going back to that old style and new for the people who enjoy the modern shooters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say definitely have the option, but also one thing that they could kind of play with would be the idea of kind of like in Metal Gear Solid, where you could look down the sight of the gun. Maybe something like that, if they want to do something like add any collectibles or anything like that to where it's hidden just off screen and you kind of have to look with that.
To kind of go off of that, there is a game that did that sort of to an effect where it was fixed camera angles, but when you aim down the sights, it was actually like the RE4 laser sights or whatever, So it was called Cold Fear. It was a Ubisoft survival horror game that took place on a ship. It was kind of like Revelations almost. So
And like Dead Aim a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Well, Dead Aim was partially a rail shooter. I kind of wish it had RE4 controls. But that game. So it's been done before. It's not like Capcom can't do it, and that'd actually be a pretty interesting style to go with, actually.
Yeah, I definitely think that for the most part it should be optional. Don't try to see that you cannot experiment with the past and the present.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to question number 7. Resident Evil 2 and 3 had weapon parts that could either make a new weapon or upgrade an already acquired weapon. Do you think that this feature should make a return in the remake? Of course, because I mean, if they excluded that, then it makes no sense for the upgradable parts, which made that game really unique over Resident Evil 1. So, yeah, they should keep the upgradable weapon parts, maybe expand on that, because I think I said in the last recording that Claire, she has the bow, and now they have the explosive bow as far as Code Veronica and Resident Evil 6 goes, so they could upgrade her bow gun to have those rounds.
And at
And
the
Resident
very
Evil 4.
Yeah, and
at the
Resident
very
Evil 4.
least, and at very least, make her switch between like the functionality of the weapon she's gonna use. Like, you know, Leon had the thing where he had 2 sidearms, the assault rifle had a grenade launcher, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that. Oh. I'll let you go, Dr. Suckers.
Sorry. I think also spread it out so that you're not in a situation where halfway through the game or even during the first quarter, you have a weapon that's equivalent to having a Gatling gun for a skeet shooting gallery.
Skeet shooting? That made me laugh a little bit with the way it was. I'm not gonna lie. But
See, okay, see,
the heck?
that time it wasn't me.
Stick shooters, okay.
that time it wasn't me, but I know we're diverging, but still, I kind of laughed a little bit.
I would say, you know, to kind of go off of what Ren was saying, you know, I think like maybe if they, like some of the weapons, like in RE0, for example, you can get like a scope for your handgun, so maybe like she can get that, or like perhaps you can get a, like she can get a stock for it, which would help her increase her aim and accuracy or something like that. I also suggested that, like, you know, as far as weapon, like actual weapons that you can get through the parts, perhaps the Mr. X boss that you run around encounter, if you kept defeating that, like maybe like Nemesis, he can drop you parts. Like maybe Claire can get a bolt action rifle.
Hey, real quick. Sorry to interrupt. Real quick, I'm gonna have to head off. Hopefully, I can be back later. Hopefully.
Okay,
All right.
Brian, take care.
All right.
See you, Brian.
All right.
See you, man.
See ya.
All right.
Peace.
So as I was saying, so like, you know, perhaps she can get a bolt action rifle, or like parts for a bolt action rifle that she can use, because she doesn't get a Magnum, and maybe that could be the equivalent of a Magnum or a slightly more powerful variant to a shotgun. Of course, the drawback would be that she would have to pull back the bolt, so power over fire rate in that case, but something like that would be pretty cool, because I know she does get like a exclusive revolver, but I don't think it takes the handgun rounds in the game. So.
It does.
Oh, it does?
Yes. Last time I checked it, that thing does take handgun bullets.
But yeah, you know.
All I gotta say to that is stronger spark shot, please, because when you finish using it and you dispersed it, it's pretty much fucking useless. So, yeah, I will go with that.
It's completely useless.
Yeah, it is. I definitely say if it comes to gun upgrading and gun customization, that Claire's campaign needs a lot more work than Leon's, because his is a lot more fun because he has a lot more to play with.
Yeah. Actually, what would be pretty interesting is like maybe you can get like certain weapon parts and both characters can use them, but perhaps if one grabs on the zapping mechanic comes into play and it'll impact the other campaign. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, more, I was gonna go off on that point, but I think you elaborated perfectly. More of you can leave certain items behind in other scenarios and other characters can grab them. So you might need them later on just in case, because scenario B is harder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are going to talk about that mechanic later in the document, but I was just thinking like maybe that would be a pretty cool like little thing. Like maybe there isn't a certain part that both characters can get, but only one can pick it up due to the zapping mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that mechanic we'll talk about more in depth later.
All right, so I guess if we covered that, we can move on to question number 8, which is: do you think there will be any scenes that will be omitted due to its portrayal or subject matter, considering that we live in a time period where more censorship takes place within certain games? Not to mention, Resident Evil Biohazard has always been censored in Japan.
I'll answer when I come back. I'm just gonna leave for like 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go off on this, and then I'm gonna let the others go. So, I think that, yes, we talked about this last time we did a recording on this, where when it comes to extreme violence, like on a Dead Space level or Resident Evil 4 level, then yes, I see this game getting censored. I think some stuff might be allowed, but Capcom did censor Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 5, which didn't show decapitations when you got caught with the chainsaw enemies. So I think that Capcom is going to just say it's better safe than sorry, because they're going to censor it in Japan surely, but I guess they're going to be like, well, the US has this version, we don't want to deal with any bullcrap with the ESRB, let's just censor it all together so there's nobody really up in arms about it.
Hey, Renegade, you know what's funny?
Yeah.
This is kind of diverging a little bit though, but recently or before, this is while I was around Street Fighter 5 saying that did ERSB like forced them or told them to censor the game, but they came out and said that they didn't have any involvement in that. They say they only rigged the games and that's it. I have a feeling that Capcom may find some excuse again, in similar fashion as that.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
I think that the only thing that that's gonna still be, I would hope the only thing that would still be censored just because of the nature of it would, as we discussed before, the scene involving Birkin laying his eggs. But that's about it. I think it'd be unfortunate if they toned down the violence. I think it'd be nice if anything, maybe perhaps offer some way to have a different mode or something like that, instead of it being a thing of everyone has to kind of be punished because of one group saying, well, no, we don't like this.
If you don't mind me going off of that, actually, and I hate to bring up a game that's extremely unrelated, but I think Modern Warfare 2 had a mission where you can actually downright skip. Perhaps what they can do is maybe implement an option where you could skip a particular cutscene, or you can skip a particular scenario within the game because of its subject matter. And I'm not, just have it as an option to skip rather than downright removing it, like you were saying, just because a few people that don't even play the games complained about it.
Yeah, like they could always do that gore DLC like they did for Evil Within, as you were saying before, Dom.
I brought that up a little bit.
Yeah.
The thing about the gore pack in Japan, though, is that even with that on, it didn't really bring out all of the gore that the Western version has, because the Western version is like the most violent version you can get. But in the Japanese version, it's just slightly a little bit more up. And I think that was just because they thought that even if they had that out, that it would somehow get their game striked as a Zero Z, which is basically like an AO rating here. So it'd be really hard to get a game like that anywhere. In Japan, you have to go through like extreme measures to get a game like that. And they just wanted to get their game out without having any issues. And I know Resident Evil kind of has that issue too, like RE4, for example, when you, because I actually own the Japanese version, whenever you blow off an enemy's head, another head pops up, unless if it's Plagas, and then when Plagas explodes, then a head reappears. So things like that. Though in the remake HD remaster, and I also believe in Code Veronica, the heads and limbs still fly off for some reason. So I don't know, maybe it's just the level of gore between games, perhaps? I don't know.
It could be. I don't know. I just think that Capcom doesn't want to, you know, they don't want to go through the trouble, so they just censored it entirely when it came to Resident Evil 4 and 5. But I guess we could move on to question number 9. So, considering that RE Remake is considered the official current canon of Resident Evil 1 and some changes and additions were made, do you think that any retcons will happen? And what do you propose if there was anything that could be interwoven between Resident Evil 2, the storyline during the time of the Raccoon City incident?
Hold on. With that, I guess that, you know, like with Resident Evil Remake, in the original game, the characters found like a severed hand, and that was going to tie in with the original version of RE0 that was on N64. So they changed that in the remake, where they just find one of the STARS members' bodies in the helicopter, and they just kind of have a general idea as to what happened. So, you know, if anything like that were to carry over, perhaps anything major from the remake, specifically at least, that stuff may be impacting the Resident Evil 2 remake, considering that that's canon. And, you know, they do bring up Resident Evil 1 in the beginning of RE2, so maybe they can bring that up just a little bit, and perhaps you know, go into greater detail with the files, at least, because the remake is now canon, so there are differences between the two games.
Yeah, if there is one thing, the transcripts of the files, they definitely will probably remain the same, but some of it has to be rewritten, because they need to add in more detail so people would know, considering the fact that we already know all about that story. So they need to add in more. As I said in the last recording, they're going to have to factor in some of the other games as well, because we already know that during the same timeline, Resident Evil 3 takes place. Maybe they can set up some stuff for Code Veronica, because immediately after that, Claire leaves to find her brother. So there's a lot of setup that can be had there, especially since, you know, Birkin and Wesker are friends. Maybe there might be some stuff going on behind the scenes. But that stuff definitely should be brought into the light for the Resident Evil 2 remake.
I think they definitely need to add, at the very least, set up in the appropriate areas for Resident Evil 3. So that, you know, as you go on, you see things have changed in certain areas. When you go back throughout the story, if they appear different in Resident Evil 3, so that way, when they get onto that game, they have something that they more or less have a lot of things already set up. Not only in terms of assets they can use, but they also have the canon established and continuing.
I also heard, like, I'm not sure if I'm 100% on this, but I remember there being something about Nemesis being deployed through the sewers. Like, maybe they can allude to that or something, where it's like some slain soldiers, and it's like, who could have done this or something like that, and then you experiment.
It's Roger Rabbit.
I mean,
I have a question up there that we could maybe discuss that little portion that you just brought up a little bit. So, you know, but that said, I do have to agree. Maybe little allusions to that, you know, or anything that can allude to that would be pretty cool to see. But we can't talk about that in greater depth later.
Yeah.
Sticks his head up through the toilet. Honey, what did you eat?
Oh my god. Oh, let's move on to number 10. I'm about to laugh my ass off here. The Outbreak games take place within the Resident Evil 2 and 3 timeline. Do you think certain things like files, locations, and Easter eggs would be welcome for the Resident Evil 2 remake?
Yes. I think it'd be pretty cool to see like little Easter eggs of the characters passing through it. It actually maybe explains some like plot holes that I know you mentioned in the last recording when we brought this up. Like there were things like the barricades, for example. Like so maybe that could be used as a little like reference as to why they got moved and whatnot.
Yeah. Because I think it didn't make any sense how they ripped apart those barricades with their bare hands and it wasn't a mess. And there was some stuff with the whole U.S. military quarantining the whole city to the point where they had checkpoints everywhere. So it makes me think, how the hell did Claire and Leon drive through a checkpoint when the army was supposed to be monitoring it? It's just weird stuff like that just sort of, ruffles my feathers a little bit. But I can get over it if it's just clear and concise and they explain something to set up for Resident Evil 3.
Like maybe they missed that particular checkpoint, or maybe they found out about it by the time Leon and Claire get there,
or maybe they went through the checkpoint, and then when you see them driving away, you see like dead bodies or something in the background, something that Leon and Claire doesn't see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be easily explained so fast.
I wonder if Resident Evil 2 doesn't have, if it has more what I call the prequel syndrome, in which a lot of information is given through it's given through books, it's given through supplemental things you have to do rather than what's going on. So, it could be that was something explained in text or something, or something along those lines rather than actual gameplay. So yeah, hopefully they'll rectify that, but I'm just wondering if that's a reason we don't actually see anything in 2.
Hey, real quick before I do my turn, if my TV is too loud, just let me know because I'm playing RE4.
Alright, sure.
And as far as this, yes, they should actually allude more towards the Outbreak games because, well, since it apparently is canon or takes place between the games, they should at least have some more establishment inside of them.
Yeah, I heard that Kevin Ryman and Leon S. Kennedy were friends, so maybe they could have some sort of thing where he invited him to the party. I mean, it's the little things that count in terms of references, like I said in the last recording, so if they could illustrate that, it would be a nice little reference to see.
And Leon is friends with everybody. He's friends with that fucker from Dead Aim, and yeah. He's friends with the dude from Gun Survivor. Like, dude, how many friends do you have?
Damn, a lot of friends. He's paying them off with government money.
Yet.
He's paying them off with government money.
Is he friends with Dante now too?
Well,
actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they start talking to each other in Project Crosstown too. But
hey, you know what? This little diverse a little bit. It'd be interesting if they actually did introduce Tony Redgrave in the Resident Evil games. Okay, now move on.
Yeah, but I think it would be good if they added those references in there. I think that it enhanced the story content more than anything, which, is not hard to do. They just need to implement it in the right fashion. And I'm pretty sure Resident Evil fans, they're going to get those references in there from Outbreak because there's a lot of people that still want an HD remake of that.
One is rumored for it to come out. We don't know if we'll see that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Outbreak HD? No, that's confirmed fake.
Damn it.
Is.
Yeah.
Damn. It'd be pretty cool to see though.
Well, fuck you,
and
Capcom.
that said, if the Resident Evil 2 remake is successful, then a Resident Evil 3 remake could happen, and maybe they can even have you explore through those areas as Jill and Carlos to extend the game.
Hey, I'm Carlos.
All the ladies like my sexy accent.
Ooh, calm down, lady. Alright, we need to move on to question number 11.
Yes, Renegade.
Oh, shut up. We need to move on to question number 11. Should For Survivor become a separate story?
We already answered this, though, so the answer is obviously yes.
Fuck yes.
I think, no, we talked about the Ada thing. We never talked about
I did brought up Hunk, though, and we all of us agreed to that.
Oh, we did? I must have not heard that. But I guess we can go into it a little bit further, though, as far as, what we want to... I guess we can talk about, what we want out of it, perhaps. I would say, what I want to see is just more of it. There's a later question that I put down, but, the ORC is not considered canon, but I would probably like to see, maybe that team die off so we can confirm that it's not canon. So that way, you know, it's just Hunk that survives.
Damn, that's like
The only
Savagery.
damn.
the only character I'm okay with that in that game is Vector, because he's basically like Hunk 2.0. He's his student.
Monk Jr.
So, you know, that's the only character I don't want to see die, but everybody else from that game can die for all I care.
What about
The
Big
Asian
Bad
wife?
Bertha?
No, Bertha can die.
What about the Blue Lens chick?
She can die. You know, I want the character that I want to see die the most from that game is Beltway. I really hate that character.
Isn't he the guy with the peg leg?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
the with
God.
the. Yeah, I really want him to die. I really hate his character, but
That one-
Vector, Vector would be like the only character I want to see live. But outside of that, like as far as like what they can expand on, like I'd like to see like rather than it being like a point A to point B thing, like perhaps Hunk has to go in reverse order in the game, and maybe there are things he has to do outside of the police station. So perhaps they can add in some of those locations from the Outbreak games. So it's still the same objective, but you know there's more to it than that, and there's more at risk.
And as I said, more fans of the traditional style of For Survivor, they could get that through like score attack after you finish. I think that should be a fully fleshed out campaign, and then the time attack modes will be available like right after that. So if you want to rush through it and get the best score, and if you want to have like stuff like tofu back, you know, they could do little bonuses and Easter eggs like that.
Yeah. I would. One other thing that I think would. I know Brandon was disagreeing with me the last time we talked about this, but I think that, like, maybe for Hunk, maybe he can get, like, different other samples besides the G virus sample. Like, because we know that in Raccoon City, there are some things that just Umbrella did not develop themselves. Like, for instance, the some of the animals that are in the Raccoon City Zoo. You never actually get to go in that game, but if like Hunk got to go to that location and perhaps like get some of the samples from there, so that way they can use that for experimentation.
I also said that should be a level in Resident Evil 2 Remake because it's a new area. It works, you know, infected
even
animals.
Yeah, like even if not the RE2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, that would definitely work out more because you're traveling through the city a lot more.
Yeah.
But you know, things like that would be pretty nice to see. And then just one other thing that I'll say, like, this would also be a great way to like maybe experiment for like a Hunk possible game, because like a lot of people just want to see like an origin story of him. Perhaps like how he just kind of became known as Hunk, and like why he kind of leaves people behind and things of that nature. Perhaps like where he has to retrieve like a specific sample of a virus, but it's much harder than, or it's much more complicated than just what it was like in Resident Evil 2, you know?
We get the origins of tofu.
Yeah.
Yes!
And then he gets
Well, he
eaten
dies
at the
at
end.
the end, though.
He gets eaten.
Yeah, he dies at the end.
By a Hunk.
So we know Hunk likes tofu.
Yes, he does.
I ship it.
Hunk heart tofu.
Yep.
X.
All right, let's go to the
One
next.
other thing. One
Oh,
other
boy.
thing. Did you guys know that tofu actually curses in Kansai, which is a dialect of Japanese?
What does he say? When he-
I don't know what he says exactly, but every time you get grabbed by an enemy, he'll curse out in Japanese.
What does he say exactly?
I
Who
don't
doesn't
know
know?
what he says exactly, but that is a little Easter egg that most people found out. It's on the Resident Evil wiki, I'm sure.
like, motherfucker, I'm not Rice Krispies.
Oh, I love Rice Krispies.
But number 12 is RE on the Sega Saturn had an extreme battle mode, and eventually it made its way to Resident Evil 2. Would you want to see it return in the Resident Evil 2 remake, or would you like to see something else take its place, like raid mode or mercenaries, for example?
I want both, like raid and EX. Not raid, mercenaries and EX.
My answer is short. The more, the merrier.
Yeah.
I would like to see extreme battle mode make its way into that. Maybe they can change it. Kind
What,
of like what,
extreme mercenaries mode?
no, because we have mercenaries no hope now, so or no mercy. So
Oh,
you know,
dude, no mercenary, no, what they call that
No
shit
mercy.
again?
no mercy.
No mercy mercenaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be good for Resident Evil 2
Wait.
remake.
Isn't No Mercy just LDK in Resident Evil?
Yeah, yeah.
It's LDK for mercenaries.
Why not have it for like make extreme like DMD mode for RE? And
Maybe.
just give buff like transformation or whatever.
Well, that was like no survivor mode or real survivor mode, not no survivor mode.
No survivor
But,
move.
Oh, Survivor. Well, that could be a mode.
Yeah, that could be a mode. I'm giving Capcom ideas. So,
Pay me for it.
I was gonna say anyways that I don't mind extreme battle mode. I think that if anything they could probably change it like they have with mercenaries mode. Although I do kind of like the old style of mercenaries before it was just kill all enemies. So maybe extreme battle mode could be that. The old mercenaries, I mean, not no what mercenaries is now.
Or 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. You know, like I think maybe extreme battle mode could be because it's basically the same thing. Just keep moving forward and kill everything on the level, except for the only difference is that with mercenaries was get from point A to point B in RE3 at least, and then you can save survivors on the way. So maybe they can do something like that with extreme battle mode. Yeah, mercenaries I'd be okay with, and especially any variation on it. Raid mode. When I tried out raid mode in Revelations 1 and 2, I initially liked it, but over time it just got so boring because it's just grinding after grinding.
It really
after
is
grinding.
just grinding
really
for
not
those
that
high level
fun.
guns. It really is at that point.
I wouldn't mind to see like maybe some of those mechanics from raid mode make their way into mercenaries, like getting new guns. Or one thing that I actually wish that Capcom would do is kind of go back to Mercenaries 3D and kind of take the idea where you can switch between loadouts between the different characters that you use. So like, say if you're playing as Jill and you really like Krauser's setup, you can take his setup with Jill. Or vice versa, you know. So I think that maybe they should look at that and do that for, the remake at least.
Motherfucker, this
Also,
ain't Resident Evil 4.
I'm sorry.
I'm just playing with you. But yeah, I can kind of hear it. But yeah, yeah, I can kind of see.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of see them switching the loadouts because I don't know why, man. I get tired of Leon with that same old handgun, shotgun setup. It's just, you know, I want to play with other stuff, and I wish I could switch it. And I think that would be a good idea because it keeps variety for the people that like certain setups.
Mm-hmm.
So-
Like I don't see why they, even if like they don't have that particular thing where you can switch between character setups, it'd be pretty cool to see like maybe something from like raid mode where like characters have certain advantages that or abilities,
Yeah.
passive and active, and then maybe you can get like specific setups that you can make in mercenaries, but on the flip side, you wouldn't have to be grinding for those weapons. You just play mercenaries and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to add is one of the advantages if they include something like mercenary mode is, Ren, you had mentioned earlier, kind of not liking how they didn't explain things such as why the military barricade was unoccupied. They could take an opportunity if they don't want to put it in the main game and have to worry about making it canon. They could use that for the mercenary mode as a way of kind of having little side stories or things like that to help explain those little things, so that people can go back and say, "Oh, okay, well that's what happened," and also kind of incentivize playing those other modes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think the variety is going to be really important. So they have to do it in a way where it's like, People might be playing this game for a long time. How are we going to make it as entertaining as possible so people can keep coming back? And I think the only way they can do that is expanding on those modes, giving you a lot to play with, and at the same time making it fun and refreshing for people to get back into, especially if it's going to expand on the modes previously iterated.
Yeah, agreed.
So, I guess we can move on to question number 13. Can we finally get a Devil May Cry 1 outfit that's Dante related for Leon and a lady costume for Claire?
Okay, to be honest though, I'd rather see Claire in a Trish costume.
You
Just
mean
because
all
you
lever?
keep the, yeah, just keep the like Dante and Trish thing going on from DMC 1.
I can see where you're coming from with that, Brandon, but like when you think about it, Claire does use the grenade launcher in the game, so perhaps they can give her like a Kalina Ann skin for the grenade launcher. And then like for Leon, they can give him like Ebony and Ivory as like an exclusive weapon because I was gonna say Rebecca. Claire Claire has the
characters around.
yeah, Claire has the the exclusive revolver with her biker outfit or cowboy outfit or cowgirl outfit, whichever you want to call it. So she gets that revolver, so maybe she can, maybe Leon. I get them confused because
Come on, Dom.
I'm getting them mixed up right now because they do share the same character model, but the point is that Leon could get Ebony and Ivory exclusive weapons that he can use, but the drawback would be it uses up more ammo. And maybe his knife could get reskinned as a little miniature rebellion, kind of like how Monster Hunter had a really long version of Rebellion.
That could make sense. I can see that, considering the fact that Devil May Cry does share a lot of similarities with Resident Evil. So I think that the references would be nice. Costumes specifically, it's just that I probably would also like them to do DMC4 Dante for Leon, considering RE6 Leon and DMC4 Dante, dude, they look so similar since they're older. So
yeah, because it's on the same engine. They're using the same character model. It's like, why didn't RE6 have that as an option? It's so ridiculous, and it makes it even worse when you consider the fact that that game doesn't even let you use alternate costumes in the campaign. Still, even on the remaster.
Man, PC Master Race, the mods are too good.
Broken Ports Master Race.
Hey, shut up.
Can we give Mr. X a Mundus skin?
Oh,
that'd be pretty cool.
No Moon Dads from DMC.
Mandus. Mandus.
But moving on, unless someone else has anything to say about number 13, we can move on to 14. Alright then. So, in the case of a director's cut or a remake, there's things that are bound to be different. What would you like to see in terms of different item placement for the remake, or would you like randomized item placement?
I kind of want to see them bring back arranged mode. So that way, we can get that different item placement. And assuming if they give you like the fixed camera angles, for anyone that's ever played Resident Evil Director's Cut, when you play arranged mode, or I think it was called advanced mode on the first Director's Cut, but
yeah, it was advanced. It was advanced.
But it's basically the same thing. Either the DualShock version or the old one. They had different camera angles too. So maybe they can do something like that with the remake, assuming that fixed camera angles and tank controls are back, where they switch up some of the camera angles, not all of them, just most of them, where they look different and you can see the game in a very different perspective. I will say though, in some cases it can be a little bit confusing when you're used to playing the game in a certain way for a very long time, but seeing it in a different camera perspective, it'd be pretty nice to see.
I would almost say that I would like to see random but only as a difficulty modifier. In other words, you could have random items, but it would be a way of testing to see that you're skilled at the game, rather than just you got the right items to deal with the particular problem in that area, whether it be liquors or a lot of zombies or something like that.
Yeah, I think that I think that's what advanced mode did. Is it increased the enemy density? So instead of it being like 2 hunters, it'll be like 3 or 4 of them. So I guess that'll make the game more challenging.
Yeah, they did that. They also did something which kind of was like the prototype to the Crimson Heads, which is the advanced zombies, where they ran faster, or in this case, they actually ran. So, things like that would be interesting. Also, what would be pretty interesting, just to kind of add on to this question, would be the random enemy placement, because you remember how Resident Evil 3 did that, depending on some of the choices you made, or depending on how you wanted to tackle the game.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to go to the instead of going to the restaurant, if you went to the newspaper or the news building, it would change up the enemy placement drastically. So where like you go straight to the restaurant, different things would happen, or like you would meet Carlos in different places and things of that nature. So perhaps they can do something like that, not only with the item placement, but with the character placement and enemy placement.
You know what I was thinking of that I want to see? I want to see Marvin turn into a Crimson Head.
That'd be pretty cool.
I would love to see that, actually.
So
yeah.
from a black man to a red man.
No, he went from a black man to a purple man
To a blue man.
to a red man.
I don't know how.
Oh, I was gonna say, just real quick, he went from being black to blue to purple to red.
Yeah, he went through the 5 flavors of the Kool-Aid.
I don't know how applicable this is to this question, but that got me thinking. Environmental kills, like you mentioned, you go into a news building, add the ability to shove a zombie down into a printing press.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, in RE3, in RE3, you get the if you've ever played that game, if you went to a different room, and this was a perfect example of that, like you went to the restaurant, and then you'd meet Carlos there rather than meeting him at the news building, whereas meeting him there would trigger a different scenario. But it would also mean that you ran into Nemesis in a different way, and certain enemies would be placed in different places. I think this also would apply to the player death. So like if you died and then reload your save and then go back to a certain area, all of a sudden, before there was just zombies, now there's hunters all over the place. So that was something that I really loved about RE3, and I hope that RE2 can maybe take from that.
Yeah, like, different events happening would make the game more interesting, and it'll kind of make you think a little bit before you go to certain areas, because you'll probably be like, all right, this path is a lot more easier to go through than the second. So now that I triggered this and seen it, I could just take the easier route, and maybe, like, in regards to beating the game under 3 hours, this path will be a lot more easier than the other one. It'll give players a lot more variety when it comes to things like maybe speed running or getting certain trophies at a certain amount of time. So I think that they should have that in there, as well as maybe like live selection. I'm just throwing that out there. That'll be more implementations of features from Resident Evil 3, considering the fact that Resident Evil 3 expanded a lot on RE2 as it was.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when you go from RE3 to Code Veronica, on a mechanics level, it just doesn't feel very satisfying because it didn't have things like Quick Turn, for example. And that was because they were both being developed simultaneously, and there's a whole spiel on that we can talk about, but I don't want to go over time or anything like that.
Understandable. So we're moving on to question number 15. Capcom had Resident Evil.net support with some of their more recent titles. Currently, the only title that it seemed like even worth having support for was Resident Evil 6 with the EX colors and the PS1 style costumes. How do you feel about the RE2 remake getting RE.net support? Keep in mind that this is a reference to the original versions of Resident Evil 6, not the upcoming re-release. Oh man, I don't know how I feel about that. You know what I hated about Resident Evil 6? I hated grinding for those EX costumes just to get those fucking tickets. Not Capcom. Never again. Never again, Capcom, please.
To kind of go off of that, like, I liked RE.net. Like, initially I didn't like it because I was like, oh, it's another Call of Duty Elite. But then after trying it, I liked it for the fact that it was like, oh, hey, I actually get free stuff for the game that I can use, you know, at any point in time, which is pretty cool. So, you know, I don't have to pay for it. It's not paid DLC or anything like that. So it's pretty cool. The only thing is that, you know, in RE6's case, it was the only game that actually had this option where you can unlock costumes, because as you move on through the games that were getting that support from RE.net, Revelations only did weapons for raid mode, and it was kind of really disappointing that they didn't even include like EX colors. Then Remake HD Remaster got it, and it didn't even give you like anything new, whether it be weapons or EX skins or anything like that. And then Zero just dropped it all together, and that was just kind of the sign that said that, yeah, we're not going to be supporting this anymore, because it's not even in RE0, and it's not in the re-release of Resident Evil 6.
Yeah, like if it's unsupported, then yeah, I said this in the last recording, but basically RE.net is an overglorified stat tracker. So
Yep.
it is taking something away, and it sucks, but at the same time, if they are unsupporting it, if they don't find it useful, then I think maybe
Not really a big deal, right?
Yeah, it's not really a big deal, and it's gonna weigh less stress on them to try to connect that to the servers as well. So whether win or lose, it's not really a big deal to me.
I would have to agree with that, and I know I've been kind of talking a lot, just like the last recording, oddly.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing about it is that if it was actually getting like better like rewards and stuff, then it would be a bigger blow. But considering that it really the only game worth having support or using it in terms of getting support with it was Resident Evil 6, there's really not much of a loss there, considering that now the re-releases for 6 are out, and it includes that RE.net stuff. So it's unfortunate, but considering that Capcom really didn't, you know, support it that much and didn't really give us anything worthwhile for it, there was really no reason to have it. And it's unfortunate because I always thought that, you know, maybe it'd be a pretty cool idea to see for like Devil May Cry, for example, where we can get EX colors without having to think that, oh, well, it's going to be something that, you know, there's going to be EX colors that maybe we don't want in game, and could we get better ones? For example, I don't like the Dante skin in DMC4 SC. Can I get a different EX color, please, Capcom? Please.
So does
I
anyone...
would.
Oh, go ahead, Dark.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I would say, since it first off, it's largely an irrelevant feature these days, and I think a better way for them to handle it would be to either, since they can add content now through things like updates and DLC, add the ability to either unlock new costumes, things like that, through play in game. Or even just add them as 3 DLC on the respective shops, depending on the platform release.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say one other thing. You know what would actually be pretty cool is, rather than doing just EX colors, and I think I've also suggested this before for Devil May Cry, why not just have a color wheel so we can make our own EX colors?
Yeah, that reminds me of what they have in KOF 13, where you can actually customize your character colors from like top to bottom. That'd be nice. It'd be a nice hint of customization, at least. If people want to run around as pink flamingo Leons, they can do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Considering that, well, fighting games are generally the only people or only genre that does this, lets you customize the colors freely. Oh, and RPGs, of course. So that'd be
Yeah.
nice.
The only other game that I know of that actually had like an EX color wheel was Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, and I actually was really disappointed that Samurai Warriors 4 didn't have that, but that's diverging a little bit. But considering that color wheels are actually something that a lot of people like, it'd be pretty cool to see that if we don't have, like RE.net and things like that.
Alright, so let me take a look at the document and we will move on to question number 15. How much influence do you think the fans hold when it comes to this remake? Do you think that the fan dev team that worked on the Resident Evil 2 Reborn project will actually do right by the fans by helping Capcom make a quality remake / horror title? That's hard to say for me. I don't know the extent of their input, so I'm hoping that at least they get rid of that whole darkness bullshit that they had going on with that project, because we all kind of complained about that in the last recording, that the problem with that game was that you couldn't see shit.
Yeah, if you don't mind me talking a little bit more about it, because I know more about it.
Go on.
I think I was the one that actually knows the most about it, but it started off as a game that was being developed on Unreal 3. They ported it over to Unreal 4. And I really didn't like the excuse of, like, a lot of people were defending the whole darkness thing, like, oh, but the city's lights would be off. And yeah, granted, the remake might change some stuff here and there, but let's remember that the power it's still in the city throughout Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 2, and those are days difference between those two games, so I don't think that would work. There are some things that I did like about that thing, though, is like or that fan project, was that, like, they added in both play styles, which is pretty nice. And the graphically it looked nice. I hope that Capcom actually doesn't use Unreal 4, but they keep seeming to use that, and recently with Umbrella Corps they're using Unity 5 for some reason. But that, I think they're outsourcing that game, which is really weird considering that they said they would never outsource, but again, at least after DMC. But it's things like that. So that's one thing, and considering that they've been hired, I don't know if they're actually working on the game or if they were just coming in there as, like, advisors. When they were making that game, or when Capcom makes that game, I hope that they don't use Unreal 4 for this remake. I would hope that they use their new engine, Pantaray, considering that it's a much better engine than Unreal 4, and I really wish that they would actually make use of it. Mm-hmm. But considering that they've been using other engines besides their own, and I really wish they would go back to MT Framework as well, I kind of see that maybe they'll use Unreal 4 instead.
Yeah, for some reason... Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off, Dark, but I was just going to say real quick, for some reason I think that they're going to use Unreal 4 because it's easier to work with, but that's just me. But you can go on, Dark.
I was going to say that I think that one of the big issues that may happen with this is they are making it come across as though the fans have a lot of influence. But one thing that they could very easily do is just be having the team on there as just nothing more than a show. Just a way of saying, well, we're listening to the fans. We're doing what you wanted. When in reality, behind the scenes, they're not really taking their ideas into consideration. They're more or less just telling them, oh yeah, we'll definitely take your input into consideration, and then doing their own thing. But I think that that people definitely could have an influence as long as the fans stay vigilant and kind of keep track of updates and things like that.
Oh yeah, and to kind of go off of that, they have been. I mean, whenever you see, like, Umbrella Corps videos, they're like, "Where's Resident Evil 2 remake?" I hope Resident Evil 2 remake isn't like Umbrella Corps, or I hope it's not like RE6. So yeah. I don't know about the RE6 part anymore, but yeah.
Me isn't that bad.
Well, no. I will. There's a question in the document that's kind of related to that, so we'll bring that up later.
So, I guess we could move on to question 17. With Capcom taking a more action-oriented approach with more recent titles, are you worried that the remake will be more action-oriented? It's a cause for concern, in my opinion, yes.
I think the concern is valid, because, you know, if Capcom wants to show that, you know, they're listening and they know what the fans want, then they'll do right by the fans. But as we've seen of Capcom as of late, they take a few steps forward and several leaps back. You know, where, you know, they did the remasters for Resident Evil, and then all of a sudden Umbrella Corps. And it's like, okay, well, why would you do this? And yes, you can argue, well, ORC sold well, for some reason. And when you think about it, when you look at the sales of the remasters for Remake and Zero, and then combine those with the original GameCube versions in terms of the sales, it actually sold pretty well. You know, so I don't see why they don't just look at something like the Remake and Revelations 2, for example, and try to make the remake more like that, rather than try to make it like Resident Evil 6.
Yeah, that is my biggest fear, is that they turn this into a shooting gallery, shooting fish in a barrel. So I wouldn't like that premise if they did that, considering the fact that I think that Resident Evil 2 is a more slower pace of a game. It's a slow burn, but it has that action there. So I think the best way for them to do this is to be conservative about it. Have the survival horror elements there. Try to have it where you don't have enough ammo, that you just can't go around and shoot everything, and try to have it where the shooter mechanics work well for what they are. Like, they have to be pristine. That's the only way that I see them pulling this off, is that it's a nice balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brandon, do you have anything to say about this?
No, not really.
Rip? Dart?
What about Mark?
I can. There is definitely concern, but I would say if they did want to include anything action related, I don't know. Part of me, this is gonna sound silly, I'll admit up front, but part of me wouldn't mind to see something kind of like House of the Dead in a way.
Oh wow! Not the movie.
Oh, so.
No, the games.
Well, technically, you already did get that with Dark Side Chronicles and Umbrella Chronicles, so you know.
No. All right.
To a technicality, you kind of already have that.
Don't remind me. But go ahead, Dark.
No, that was it.
Okay. Well, like I said, I just hope that it's something they take note of, where they keep the shooter elements, but they also keep the survival horror elements as well. Moving on to question number 18. On the official Resident Evil 20th anniversary site, the date of March the 22nd, 2016 was listed. Originally, it was speculated that a teaser for the upcoming remake would be shown off. Unfortunately, it turned out to be just an interview with series producer Kobayashi. What were your thoughts on the interview itself?
You mind if I go first, since I was the most disappointed by it?
Let's just call this the episodic rule, since Dom is going to take the helm.
Okay. You know, I was extremely disappointed by it, and you know, Kobayashi reconfirmed something that he admitted in a Revelations 1 developer diary. In that Revelations 1 developer diary, he had said that he likes to play a lot of action games. So in this discussion, it was just 20th anniversary stuff, you know, just a generic interview, but he basically reconfirmed that he likes action games, that he does not like survival horror. He also said that he just wants to make Resident Evil for casuals and that he wants to make it for entertainment purposes. And to an extent, you can say, yeah, well, Resident Evil and just video games in general are for entertainment purposes. But the way that he was going about it was that, like, he just wanted to make a Michael Bay film, or he just really wants to make this game for hardcore casuals. And that's a problem. And I said privately, and I think I've also said it in the previous discussion, or the previous recording, was that the Resident Evil 2, or just not Resident Evil 2, but the Resident Evil franchise should have Koji Oda as the series producer rather than Kobayashi, because Kobayashi, when it comes to action games, he knows what he's doing. For Resident Evil, on the other hand, I strongly disagree. I think he should be stepping down and letting like someone like Koji Oda take his place.
Yeah, because the two interviews, it's like crazy. It's like night and day. You have Koji, who seems a lot more informed about the series, who seems to have a lot more passion compared to Kobayashi. So I think that what they need to do is they just need to get the more dedicated, passionate people who's been there for a longer time, that's been working on the games, instead of just Kobayashi. Because, as you said, there was one point where he was good working on certain projects like Devil May Cry, but Resident Evil, he just seems out of touch. So, if that's the case, then Capcom needs to reevaluate what's going on with that and get more credible people in there that knows what they're doing, because they don't want to keep taking this series in the wrong direction. And I think with Resident Evil 2 Remake, they have a lot of capability to do that.
To kind of go off of that, when it came to the remasters, they had very few team members that worked on the remake on board at Capcom. However, when it came to Resident Evil 0, most of those team members still work at Capcom, and they're working on the Resident Evil 2 remake now. So, it makes sense why they would. It would make more sense to get someone from that team in particular to take head of that. Because, like Koji Oda, for example, he had mentioned that he's been working with Capcom since Resident Evil 0 was on the N64, and he took over when Hideki Kamiya stepped down from doing RE0, because the original N64 version was actually being directed by Kamiya.
Yeah, and I remember, creative differences with that, with at least like Resident Evil 2. So I think that what they need to do is just get people in there that knows what they're doing, and like Koji Oda, he sounds like a pretty well-rounded individual when it came to the Resident Evil 2 remake. So I think that he is capable of doing it if they get him in there. And for reference, I meant Resident Evil 0, because that's the interview that he was on, right? He wasn't on any of the series interviews that they had with the 20th anniversary? Actually,
he did the series interview that he did. That was the one for the 20th anniversary, but he did do a lot of RE0 stuff. One other thing before we let somebody else go, people like to also bring up, well, Kamiya doesn't like horror games, but the difference between Kamiya and Kobayashi is that Kamiya has a better track record when it comes to making his games. At the very least, when he doesn't like something, he'll at least make it for the people that do like it, and that's the difference between him and Kobayashi. Kobayashi just wants to do his own thing, whereas Kamiya will at least try to do something that the fans want,
Yeah. Like I said yesterday, there needs to be a bit of organization, and there needs to be some fan service in there, because if you don't cater to what the people want or what the people like, then they're not going to buy your product. It's simple as that. It doesn't get any more complex. It doesn't need to be something that's smoke and mirrors. It's just the facts. So I hope that they learn that these talented people do need more recognition, and maybe they can get a better director in there for Resident Evil 7. That's what I'm hoping, at least. So, does anyone else have anything to say on this subject?
No.
Alright, what about you, Dark? No?
No.
Alright then, let's go to number 19. Do you think that it's coincidence that the Resident Evil 20th anniversary logo is similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake logo seen in the announcement video? Do you think that Capcom plans to do big things for the remake? For the latter part, yes. And to me, I was surprised when it was pointed out. Like, it's one of those things that you don't see it first until you actually go back and look. Because the logo that they presented with the Resident Evil 2 remake was like red, and this one was white. So when you put 2 and 2 together, I kind of photoshopped the image myself and turned it red. It looks very similar. So I think that was their master plan. Maybe they had something cooked up, but I saw that the game was progressing in development, so maybe they're putting out these videos until they have something to announce, maybe at E3.
Yeah, everyone is speculating that it's going to be for E3.
Yeah.
I'll say my piece last, and I'll let somebody else go because I've been talking a lot lately. So.
Does anyone have any opinions on this? I think Brandon's
Brandon. Okay, well then I guess I can go since everyone's Rick. As far as the logo goes, I was actually pretty surprised that it looked so similar, and that's when I tried it out myself. So seeing it was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I would take it that maybe they want to do some big things for the remake, and that's why the logo is of a similar font. I just want to see it though. I want to say that they will do it, but I want to see it before I am, assured that that's the case. That's what they're doing with the game.
Yeah, you have to see it before it, turns into something. They could like literally just make more of references to newer games since it's the 20th anniversary, but naturally they have to. I like that we mentioned in the last recording that them doing things for the fans, like either trying to troll or get away with it, with like Metal Gear Solid 5, for example, where it was by Moby Dick Studios. Those little things that people could pick up on actually generate hype. So
yeah,
if they manage to put something in there that falls under the radar, under our nose, it gets people more invested into the product and what you're offering down the line. So I think they should release like a promo or something with that font and maybe show a little bit of the game off, like blurred or something like that, and then they have the release date for E3, and then they get people invested, like an ad campaign. They just keep putting stuff out there that gets people invested instead of just sitting on it until the game comes out, and then not a lot of people are that excited for it as they would with an ad campaign.
Yeah, I even said, even if they did like a small teaser, like DMC4 SE style, where it's just somebody walking, or if they showed like screenshots or concept art for the remake, because obviously they're going to use concept art for like the new things, so anything would work at this point.
Yes, exactly. So I think we're moving on to question number 20. What do you think?
Did Brandon and Dark want to go before we moved on, because I'm not sure if they're back?
I think they were.
Brandon's back.
Oh, Brandon.
I don't really have anything to add, to be honest.
That's okay.
As far as the scenario thing goes, they should keep it how they did.
No, we're on number 19.
We're on 19, buddy.
Move on to 20.
Oh, buddy, you're jumping ahead there, buddy.
I thought we were on number 20. I heard 20, so.
Well, we were moving on to 20, but we weren't sure if you wanted to go for 19.
The logo? Not much to say on the logo. It looks the same. A very, very good game. Yada, yada, yada. Let's move on.
Alright. So, what do you think will happen of multiple scenarios? Do you think Capcom will go all out with the bare minimum by just adding in the canon scenarios? Or do you think they will go all out and include all scenarios? Or do you think a hybrid of 2 scenarios will retcon the old canon?
I'll go last for this one.
Okay. Hello, evil laughter. I think that they should expand on the scenarios with like a hybrid. of I don't think it should retcon everything. I just think that maybe they should go in there and take this time to clean up certain aspects and add in, like, splice in some stuff from later games that make the plot just a lot more connective and cohesive that way. Because if you do that, then it'll sort of link with the stuff that people already know, but making it new in the process of the events that were going on in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if they add that connective tissue, then I think that it will be good. But again, I don't think they should stray too far off the beaten path. I said it in the last recording. I wasn't sure about the scenario C, because if they did that, then it would be cool. But if they did it, then I think it'd be like a little bit too much for Capcom to handle. And considering how lazy they are, I don't think it would be done well. So, but that would be nice if they added in live selection and scenario C existed.
Well, really, I just rather, me personally, I think they should keep it as the same how they did it in the original. Just have
Player A, player B,
and pick your character, whichever you prefer, or go by the canon scenario. But if they should do multiple endings, though, that will be a little tricky. Then I'm not sure how they're going to do that.
Well, from my understanding, the game has 2 endings. That has the ending.
Yeah, I know
where
it has 2 endings, but as far as, you know, RE1 multiple endings.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So multiple endings,
Also,
that could definitely be a thing.
As a FYI, the endings are relatively the same, so not much of a difference.
Yeah, there's no difference, but maybe that could change for the remake.
And I think we talked about in the last recording, like, let there be like a bad ending or something. I'm kind of surprised that, considering that Resident Evil 1 had good bad endings, that this one didn't. So I would like to see that come back in some fashion. Maybe like if they didn't blow up the train in the tunnel, then Birkin would still be alive, and then he would chase them down outside with the army and kill everyone or something like that.
If I'm not mistaken, that was Darkstalker's idea.
I'm
not sure.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it was brought up yesterday that good and bad endings, multiple endings, should take place again, and that would be something easier for Capcom to do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh God, Dark.
I think that particular one was Ren's idea. Mine was later on that helicopter that drops misdirects. Basically, you encounter it later, and you have to fight multiple ones at the same time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't remember how it was exactly, but I do remember we were discussing that. But yeah.
So, does anyone else have any opinions on this?
Does
No.
Dark? Oh, Dark, you don't want to go?
Ren's and Ren, it's been pretty much well expressed.
Oh well, I guess I can go then.
Mhm.
As far as like the canon goes, I think a hybrid scenario would actually work out a lot better, because what they could do is do the live selection thing. They can do like different like non-live selection choices, kind of like Resident Evil 3 did, and that could somehow impact it based on your choices. And maybe what they can do is like do the alternate endings to add on to it, because as much as the 2 endings aren't bad, I think people just want more endings, so that way they can go back through the game more than once and have something to look forward to each time. Whether or not they do as many endings as they did with the original and the remake, that that will be remained to be seen, or I can't speak, but that'll be something that we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully Capcom gets the memo with that maybe people want to go through the game more than once and see more than just the 2 endings for each character that are literally the same thing.
Okay, number 21 is a little brief to go along with the last question. Do you think that the choice system from Resident Evil 3 should make its way back into Resident Evil 2 Remake? Yeah, I think we kind of elaborated on that with live selection. I think that it'll be a great idea. Maybe have that factor into the fact that you need to sort of make that decision to get multiple enemies. I can't speak even. Blah. Multiple endings.
Yeah, and I mean, well, the multiple enemies thing isn't too far-fetched because we did kind of bring up the whole random enemy placement thing too.
Oh yeah, so my Freudian slip factored into something good. Yeah, it can maybe spawn differing enemies as well in differing locations, considering what you choose. Because yeah, that does factor in because there was these decisions that you made in Resident Evil 3 where you could fight Nemesis or you could literally just knock him out and you don't have to deal with him anymore. You could like take an item off of him and you could loot his body. So I think that might be good for certain fights or scenarios. Like you can sort of bypass something entirely because Remake had this also where you could fight the plant and you could have Barry just come in there with a flamethrower and fuck it up. So that'd be quite interesting to see if they can implement it right.
If I'm not mistaken, the Chronicles games had you fight the plant too. The one in RE2.
Yeah,
big plant
yeah.
that's down in the lab.
The big plant that could be a boss. You know, it could be like where if you cut on the sprinkler system, maybe it'll die, considering the fact that it does weaken some of the enemies in the area. But if you don't, then you have to fight it as a boss straight up. I don't know how they can do it without making it look ridiculous. Maybe when you come back to the ladder.
Maybe they can do V-Jolt again?
Maybe. Because I was thinking of how it was ridiculous considering they were climbing on ladders in Umbrella Chronicles or Dark Side or whatever. And they were shooting at it while on the ladder. So I think that in that vein it'd be ridiculous, but maybe they can make a way to make it work. Like maybe it detaches or something and it comes after you.
I think the whole V-Jolt thing would make more sense because they could add in like new areas to the labs.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe they can add in a basement that got flooded, and you know, there's like a giant, you know, or several rooms where you have to go and use V-Jolt in, and or burn the roots, and yeah, it'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good if they manage to make it work in with the enemies and ending. So, yeah, that's pretty good. My fuck up led to something fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess we can move on to question 22.
Before we move on, just to add in one more thing, how would you guys feel about optional bosses if it tied into the live action or live selection thing?
Optional bosses? Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, to see enemies that you don't see, or maybe like, I think in a place where it could factor in the most is the Gator boss, because you kind of, it's kind of like live selection anyway, except you're not making any choice. You just have to make the choice of whether you're going to use ammo on it or not to kill it properly. But I guess that could be a choice. Like,
there's no reward on killing the croc, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to kill when you blow his mouth up, but still, there's no reward from it.
Yeah, there's no reward, and I think they need to make it like more specific and harder. Maybe like have it as a puzzle to unlock the container, and if not, you have to fight them like straight up. I think that'd be pretty cool. Or have a specific item, because they started doing that. Like they changed up the bosses a little bit in Resident Evil 1 Remake, so they have specific items that you need, or specific things that could damage them more often. Or it was just straight up somewhat like the original, except they fuck with the level design, like the turret at the end where the gate is closed, where you run through the back. They could do something like that where you might think you can get out, but you can't.
Yeah, right.
So I would like to see stuff like that. Just them sort of playing up the expectations that people have from the classic, but completely like mindfucking you to the fact that you're trapped and you need to find a different strategy to defeat the boss.
Right.
So that's what I think on that. Does anyone else have anything on that?
No.
No.
Alright.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I think we move on to question 22. There's been numerous cut enemy types across various Resident Evil titles. Do you think that Capcom should go back for those designs and use them to include new content for the remake?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that like I said, it's always good to utilize, older stuff, making sure it works, putting new spins on them. Like, there was one enemy I saw that was like when they were doing Lisa Trevor and more Nemesis infected. I think it was like Nemesis infected civilians. So, I think that would be interesting.
Are
That's
you
what gave
talking
me an
about the?
idea.
Are you talking about the Nemesis Parasite betas?
Yeah, the Parasite betas.
They used those in Operation Raccoon City, and I actually don't mind those enemy types. I thought that was a pretty interesting, mechanic to add in. Like, I just don't like the way that they worked in ORC, because they were actually like little spiders that would climb up to the zombie's head and just decapitate them and somehow take control of their nervous system that way.
Dude, why does that remind me of the heads from Dead Space?
Or the face huggers from Half-Life.
Yeah.
I think what would be actually cooler is if, obviously that game is not canon, so they don't have to go by the design of that particular game. But what they could do is recreate the Nemesis Parasite and perhaps have it where, like, some enemies, when you kill them, they'll go down, but they'll get back up, and they'll have, like, maybe a different head, or maybe they'll have, like, similar tentacles to, Nemesis. But I think that would work more for Resident Evil 3 Remake, perhaps, more so than 2.
I would think that they should put in another prototype enemy like the Nemesis to give you an idea of what you're facing, except this guy's a little bit more faster to deal with. And then you kill him in the sewer or something like that, and then it'll give a prelude to the Nemesis monster that you will face in Resident Evil 3 Remake. So I think nice little touches like that would sort of lead up to the next game if they decide to do it, which is smart.
Mm-hmm.
It's very smart.
Right.
So what were you saying, Brenda?
That actually gave me an idea, though, for Resident Evil 3 Remake. You guys pretty much said it, though. What if Nemesis affects civilians and turn them into, like, zombies or other types of monsters? That would have been really cool.
Yeah, it really would.
What about Dark? Because I don't want to just start talking unless if, he wants to go.
Yeah, I
want to
don't
go
talk
last.
so much.
Yeah, I do. That's why I'm going last for a lot of days.
Well, as far as that goes, I had two different ideas. One is if you're gonna go the proto-Nemesis route, it could be an incomplete version that one of the canisters was dropped from the helicopter that contained it. The other was there was a giant monster, C09 or N09, something like that, where it basically was a multi-phase boss because of how tall it was, and it almost looked like an amalgamation of tentacles. Something like that, I think, could be interesting, to where you have a boss that you had to deal with in multiple stages in that way, rather than just multiple parts, but having to go move up and down between levels, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I think for like what I would like to see, there was stuff that was cut from the Resident Evil 0 game. There was like a bat-like hunter type monster, or I think it was supposed to be like a mini boss or something like that. But it was supposed to be like a giant bat, but it would act like a hunter in the sense that they would show up and try to attack you like any old hunter would. But something like that, or anything that was brought over. That was cut from Dash or 1.5 that was brought over to Outbreak, and anything that can be used from that put into the Resident Evil 2 remake, or even concepts that they cut from the Outbreak games would work really well for the remake, or even like the enemy types from Outbreak be put into the remake. Like, I know there's that one enemy type that is like covered in like insects or whatever from Outbreak. That you encounter in the Raccoon Hospital, which is a pain in the ass to deal with, and I'm not even sure how to kill it myself, but it would be pretty cool to see in Resident Evil 2 Remake, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good. That sounds really good. We are about a few more pages down. I think after these 2 questions will be 2 more pages left. So, we're getting through this. For question 23, when the Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced, Square Enix released the PC version of the original Final Fantasy VII on PSN on PS4. Do you think the same should happen to Resident Evil 2? Also, considering that it's the 20th anniversary of Resident Evil, do you think that they should release the original version of Resident Evil, not the director's cut or DualShock version, and Resident Evil 3 alongside that?
I think Brandon was saying no last time. And... oh, he's here.
He literally sounds like a zombie.
We were talking about porting over the classics over to PC because of the 20th anniversary.
Porting the classics over to PC or porting the PC versions?
The PC versions to console, and yeah.
I would advise more the GameCube version, since all of them were on the GameCube and just, well, they look better, perform better as far as I'm concerned than the PC version.
Again,
so
never played those versions, so it makes sense. And one of the versions had like a hard move for Resident Evil 2. So I figure maybe bringing that over with better graphics would be more suitable. And I guess, because people will buy it. And don't get me wrong, people will buy it and replay it if they had stuff like better graphics, the hard move,
or just better performance.
Yeah, better performance and trophy support.
I'm actually for something like that. I think that, the PC versions would be nice to see. Like, I'd like to see Resident Evil 2 Platinum make its way over. Even if it's just one of the 3 classics, I'd be okay with that, because I think it'd be best to have the original version of the game that's getting remade on there so that people can experience it before getting onto the remake. And like with the original versions of like RE1, because that game is not available digitally, only the infamous version of the DualShock or the director's cut, and then 3, because I like 3, so yeah.
All right, so does anyone else have any questions for this?
I would almost say, if they're gonna do that, maybe also consider, we've mentioned like Dash, maybe doing a bit of an English translation for that, and then having that as something additional, not changing over the voice actors, anything like that, just giving subtitles.
Yeah, just releasing the codes out to the public. Like, I think 1.5, a lot of people want to actually play that. It's really hard to get your hands on it, although I've seen some people play it on a PC. I don't know how to emulate it though myself. Dash, on the other hand, I don't even know if they have the codes for that still or not, but it'd be pretty interesting to see what they had.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Like, it'd be nice pre-release material, because to my knowledge, Code Veronica X had a lot of it. So with the Wesker reports and everything, they can probably like show more developer diaries, or go back and show more people how Resident Evil 1.5 worked. Maybe they should even release a more stable demo of that, because I mean, only Capcom has that thing. So I mean, they could, give us a taste of it if they aren't going to release anything more stable about it, or if no one will update it. So I think that plenty of interesting ideas could be pre-release material that will cause people to buy it, or maybe even bundle it in special editions.
Yeah.
So moving on to question number 24, which is a short one. What do you hope that could come out of this remake?
Resident Evil 3 remake?
Yes. That's all that needs to be said for me, is that I hope they take this liberty, and hopefully it sells well for them to make the Resident Evil 3 remake, because I'm kind of dying to play that, to be honest. Imagine Nemesis in HD. That's gonna be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Better graphics, I mean, but we already seen him in HD.
Well, yeah, he'll be better. He'll be in a better game too. That's not Operation Raccoon City.
Yeah. Or he won't be having emotions and actually having an eye color.
And he won't
Or
be...
sounding like a robot.
And he won't have a hard-on for
Well-
Alice.
Yeah.
Well, I actually like the robot one. I don't know why.
fucking hate that one. It's so annoying.
Stars.
All
You
right.
just like it because it's for shits and gigs, not for
Yeah.
scare factor. I actually like the more menacing, like stars, like that. That's awesome to me. As far as what I can hope for this remake, yeah, obviously Resident Evil 3 remake. I know some people really want to see Code Veronica remade as well. I don't think it personally needs a remake, though. That said, I think it'd be pretty nice to see it get remade because there's a lot of things that could be improved on with the gameplay. And I know that's kind of weird coming from someone who hasn't actually completed it, but I don't really like that one per se, so I just have no real reason to kind of go back to it.
To add on to that, Code Veronica is kind of like a love it or hate it affair. Because that's when the story really started to get a little jumpy with the whole, superhuman Wesker and everything. That is the origins of that. So, I think that it's really jumpy in some places, but it does stick to the nostalgic Resident Evil. They do give you some cool stuff to play with, but overall, some people think it's way too long, or they think it's uninteresting. So,
Or bullshit balancing.
Because there is moments in the game where it gets really easy. You're like having a breeze, and then it gets really fucking hard, especially when you fight that first tyrant in the plane. And if you don't have those bowgun rounds, which you can easily forget, then it's super hard to down him sometimes. Especially for like a beginner. Like if you already played it, sure, but for a beginner, that was hard as shit for me because I forgot those rounds.
And let's not forget the fact that respawning enemies in that game.
Oh yeah,
that was a great fucking idea, Capcom.
Scoping freaking enemies. All right.
Something that carried over from Resident Evil 0. Yay!
But yeah, as far as that, I think it'd be okay to see it remade if it means fixing the problems from that. So if the remake for 2 is successful, they can improve on what was good in Code Veronica and just make it better and take out the things that a lot of people dislike about that game. Like I said, I really don't like the way that game is balanced. So, and that's part of the reason why I don't really go back to it.
The knife is OP. 2 hits. Let's go.
Yeah.
I've never been successful with knifing in that game. I'm sorry, I just haven't.
You just gotta go for the legs. That's pretty much a down right there, and just keep slashing until they die. But
That's what she said.
God damn it. But for question 25, we have: do you think that Mr. X should have a bigger role within the remake? Of course.
Bigger. How much bigger exactly? I mean,
Like maybe show up in more areas.
Take the
show up in more areas.
Yeah, in that case, I agree. But his role is already big. I mean, he does play an important part in the B scenario, as in trying to kill you or take the sample.
I actually had an idea for this that would roll over into 3. The idea would be that, every time you defeat Mr. X, right, he just falls down, then he comes back later.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking was they could add in maybe a little cutscene that shows that they're sending that information back to Umbrella whenever he's defeated in order to modify the Nemesis and create it into what it becomes later on, so that when they deploy it, they have something that they feel can stand up against who they're trying to go after.
Okay, Dark. I see your point, but technically that can't work because Nemesis was deployed first.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean that's actually not a bad idea though. But Nemesis was deployed first, and it's the first half of RE3 took place before 2.
It was a stupid idea anyway.
Actually, to add on what you were saying, Dark, I think that could work, but instead of maybe having it focused on Nemesis, have it focused on a different tyrant altogether that could be introduced in a later Resident Evil game.
Yeah, because there's plenty more tyrants that are manufactured after the fact. As we saw, we recently did a ender of Resident Evil Damnation, and there were tyrants in there. So yeah, that could easily be calculated to have more research from combat data. And they could take that and they could apply it to another tyrant of a higher caliber, like in those movies or maybe in other games beyond just Resident Evil 2.
You know, it's
Yeah.
in theory, that actually works for Damnation.
Yeah.
Because in RE2, all he does is sit there, start walking towards you, and take the bullets.
Damnation,
In Damnation,
runs.
he run towards you, and yeah, so that does, in theory, works for Damnation too.
Yeah, and you know, as far as like what I think should go, I don't think they should add in a running mechanic to him because like I actually like the slow menacing walk. However, what I do think would be pretty cool is like maybe I think we brought this up earlier with the whole like or in the previous recording like perhaps if he gets like infected with like a G virus and instead of like getting cut open like some of the other characters that reject the G virus because of the
It
version that
modifies
they're
inside him.
yeah, like it improves him to some extent or something like that. Because I don't remember if RE2, but by the final fight with him, if he transforms or not. But one thing that was kind of ridiculous in fucking ORC was that he becomes a flaming tyrant for some reason, which makes no sense in the Resident Evil universe. But that
He's on
said, I think
fire.
it, yeah. But that said, I think it'd be pretty cool to just see him like transform, perhaps. And given that the G virus is the most important point of the story in Resident Evil 2, I think it'd be pretty cool to kind of just tie that in.
Yeah, like tying it in, making it all make sense. It goes back to what I said earlier about having that connective tissue to the rest of the series. If they experiment on that and if they implement it right, then a lot of fans are going to pick up more on those references than something obscure.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think about it, it would actually work really well too because not only could they go off of that idea that Dark was bringing, where they take off the combat data from him, but even Nemesis at one point, you know, he gets dumped into a bin filled with various different umbrella chemicals, and he also goes through and eats another dead tyrant that was in the disposal plant. So you know, and that's where he gets. Yeah, the dead factory. You know, he eats through another tyrant when he spawns in for the last time for that final fight, gaining even more power. So, it'd be pretty cool to see something like that with Mr. X, maybe, just not on the same scale as Nemesis.
Yeah. And maybe for the Resident Evil 3 remake, they could show that colossal fight that happened between the soldiers and the tyrants that were in that room. Because I always ran that room wondering, like, everyone's dead. What the hell happened here? There's a big-ass tyrant in the corner. There's dead soldiers everywhere.
Yeah, good question. What did happen here? The tyrant, it was a different deployment tyrant that got murdered by the rail cannon.
I just think that, yeah, they ran into him and then they tried to make the rail cannon work, but the tyrant was fighting back, which led to all them getting slaughtered in the process.
He got bodied.
Yup. So we're moving on to question 26. As of late, we've seen Capcom take steps forward and steps back as a company. Do you think that if Remake is successful, Capcom will take more steps forward or back? Or do you think that they are bound to take several steps back despite possible success? I don't know. Capcom is like, to me, Capcom is really hit or miss as far as they go company-wise. It's like they have really good announcements like this one with the Resident Evil 2 remake, and then they fuck up a lot of shit like Street Fighter 5 to the point where the launch was abysmal. So I think that they have the capability to bounce back, but it's probably never going to be like the golden days where they used to just pump out goal after goal after goal in terms of content for the PS1 and PS2 era. I don't think that's ever coming back, to be honest.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think that if we look at like Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, for example, great game. But I think that what's going to happen is that it's going to get a lot of mixed reactions where it's like, you know, we could have gotten this instead of that, and more people would have preferred taking that over, you know, this. Like, for example, for Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, the developers themselves that were actually contemplating between adding in a short Virgil campaign or adding in 2 new characters, and they decided to add in 2 new characters, totaling the character count to 5. So
Yeah, they focus on gameplay rather than narrative, which I would have chose narrative personally.
yeah, so I mean, and that's what might happen with like the Resident Evil 2 remake, where the game is good, but there's going to be things that are disappointing about it, and that's what'll make Capcom seem like they're stepping back. Hopefully, it's not a Street Fighter 5 scenario, but honestly, it's not Ono running it, so I don't think we're going to have to run into an Oh no situation, if you catch my
Or, I
drift.
mean, like a oh no situation.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, I just caught on to that too. I was looking away and I caught on to that. Oh no.
You're
Uh,
late.
Yeah, I know. But Doc, do you have anything to say on this?
Honestly, I think they're gonna. It's gonna be just like a little kid learning to walk. They're gonna run forward and then fall flat on their face.
Which is ironically the same thing from the last recording. But yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I just wish that I wish that they get their act together because they have a lot of IPs right now that are, in my opinion, still hot, but they aren't doing anything with them, which is the problem. So that's why I kind of suggested that maybe it's best for them to pawn off their IPs if they aren't using them in the future. Like, if it gets worse, then I think that Capcom should throw in the hat by now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to see Sony buy them out.
Mm.
Just
Well-
because it seems like Sony would probably make use of their IPs or
Well-
make them do good things with their IPs.
If that's the case,
Well,
then
yeah,
Sony won.
does use the IP. They do use the IPs a lot more than most companies do. Like for example, like this is like a divergent a little bit, but compared to Sony and Nintendo, Sony used more of the IPs, more of the older IPs, more than Nintendo do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can attest to that. So just if it gets worse, hand them off to people that will do something with them. For number 27, we're gonna
Be-
go with this. Oh, did
Bef-
someone not
Before
go?
we do, I was just gonna say one last thing that I think if anything, Capcom might be in a situation where they don't have to necessarily throw in the hat, but IPs are gonna have to get sold. But on the bright side, though, if they get sold, maybe these companies might actually use them. I know that sometimes that's not the case, but there's that small glimmer of hope that they might use them.
Yeah, here's hoping. I hope that they see the potential in their other franchises, not just pump out Resident Evil and Street Fighter every year. They gotta start using other stuff. They gotta start taking risks. I know that's what got them in a hot seat the last time, but I just don't think that they did it right. I think that they should probably do the same stuff that Naughty Dog is doing. Really focus on something with like B Team and A Team and see what you can cook up, because that'll be the best way to create AAA titles, really, and have work on another title and release that sooner or later. So I think that they should do that. Just take some cues, do some homework with what the fans want, and there you have it. Stop constantly pegging us with surveys to the obvious, because we already know that we want Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yep.
So I think that we're moving on to 27, which is, do you think that re-releases of Resident Evils 6 and 4 may potentially impact not only the Resident Evil 2 remake, but also Capcom and their view of what the fans want for the Resident Evil franchise? Well, go ahead, Dom.
I was just gonna say, the re-releases through 6 through 4, it seems like Kobayashi, and there's another question in the document that we'll get to in more detail. Kobayashi wants to take the quote-unquote harsh criticisms of 6, so they may have some influence on that. I don't know. Like, on the one hand, I want to say that no, they won't to an extreme effect, but on the other hand, I want to say to some extent they will, like control schemes, for example. I think control schemes and camera angles, I think that'll make a huge impact. The one thing I really hope they learned from all three of those games listed is that being able to make like custom control layouts and button inputs, like that's something that the Devil May Cry franchise does, so I hope that they do that for Resident Evil.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that they need to take under advisement, but going to Resident Evil 6 and how it got feedback and criticism is the worst thing that they could have done. I said this in the last recording and I'll say it again. If they want real good feedback, they should have just went to how Remake 1 performed, considering that they are recreating Remake 2 from the ground up. So if they're doing this, then they obviously want to pull as much as they can from Remake 1, considering how good it was, considering how many people consider it to be the definitive version of Resident Evil 1. So I don't understand why they didn't just do that. Instead, they're looking at a game that was massively panned, and they're trying to figure out improvements from that while not looking at the core of what makes these remakes shine, which is adding in diversity to what is already established.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is that they're not looking at the core of the problem. They're looking at something else, and I hope that they don't expect success from just looking at all the RE6's issues. Maybe that would be a better premise if they decided to look at that stuff for RE7, considering the fact that it's continuing a trend of the action genre or action shooters. So they should look at that for RE7, not for the remake. I think that they need to look at the first remake entirely.
Well, of course, we're going to talk about that in greater depth once we get to question 29. So I would say, it's a slightly different worded question, but it does have to, it does deal with that particular subject. So.
Once again, I said it in the original recording, I'm a Time Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I would say with the re-releases of these, if the only thing that bothers me about is I know that no matter what, despite their shortcomings, a lot of people are going to buy 6, 5, and are going to buy all 3, regardless. But I think that the problem with this is that if Capcom makes a lot of money off doing this, they might just decide to let up, or if they're projecting a lot of money, being a lot of revenue coming in from these, it might be a situation where they maybe ease back their goals on Resident Evil 2 a bit, because they can say, well, okay, we know we're gonna make a lot from re-releasing these games on the new platforms, so it doesn't matter if this sells as good as we're hoping. Let's just kind of put this, and this feature and leave it at that, rather than if they didn't have that additional revenue to count on and had to say, okay, we need to take this seriously. We need to do as put everything into this new game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, moving on to question number 28. To take it back to the 20th anniversary's official website, there are titles separated from each other. For example, Resident Evil 0 HD and Umbrella Corps are labeled as anniversary titles, whereas Resident Evil 6, 5, and 4 are labeled as anniversary projects. What do you think this could mean? Do you think that the Resident Evil 2 remake will be under title or project? And once again, I had to take this to Dom so he can elaborate on it with more clarity.
Okay, so basically, and I left screenshots of what they left up on the official site. The only thing that after that interview that site got updated, they changed things like they brought up the remake originally in that site, and now it doesn't. They put up this really cool anniversary art, and then they have this screenshot here dividing the two titles, or the two types of Resident Evil titles. So you have your 20th anniversary titles, which seem to be games that are either new or games that are re-releases but have new content in them, like Resident Evil 0 HD Remaster, for example. Whereas the 20th anniversary projects are just standard re-releases that are coming onto the current gen platforms. I'm I'm kind of disappointed that RE4 is not under title if that's the case too, because I would really like to see some new content with that game. But that said, you know, that's what it seems like to me, is that that the only reason why they're separating these is that to let people know that if you're getting a title, that means there's going to be either new content within the re-release or it's a new game altogether, whereas a project is just a standard re-release. So if you're not interested in it and you've already gotten this on the previous consoles that it's been released on, you don't really need to get this if you don't want it.
I'm in 100% agreement with that. I think that this might be a perfect indicator of what's to come in the future. I think that for this in particular, it does mean that for RE7 and future projects, I do wonder, like, specifically, I think they're going to name the HD remasters as the title or projects, right?
Yeah, the projects, like, what's considered a project in this case is Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil 4, those particular re-releases. Because it just seems like all they're really getting is, the content that they've already came with. Nothing new.
Yeah. So it seems like the projects are going to be the remasters.
Yeah, but what's kind of confusing about that for some people that might not have ever seen this, and I'm not sure if you're going to share this image when you, edit this and whatnot, but
I probably will.
Resident Evil 0, on the other hand, is an HD remaster, but the difference between the two is that it includes new content like DLC and the Wesker mode, for example. Mm-hmm. So that's how you know the difference between the project and the titles, is that anything that's a title includes new content if it's an HD remaster or if it's a new game, whereas projects are just your standard re-release.
Yeah, like nothing really done. So that's what I think, is that if Capcom want to slack it up, they'll make a project. But if they really want to put new stuff in there, then that belongs to the front of the titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also seems like, when you're looking at RE0, for example, they've been really pushing that game more so because a lot of people did not know that game existed, which is a good thing that it's under titles in that respect, at least.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think of that premise, Brandon?
I got nothing to say. Dom pretty much said everything, as usual.
I'm sorry.
Dom is the page master, confirmed.
I'm sorry, I just know a lot about my favorite franchise.
What about you, Dark? Anything?
No, I think you guys got it rather succinctly, and it definitely makes a lot more sense having it explained.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I guess we can move on to question 30. Oh, wait.
Or it's 29.
29. My page was scrolled all the way up for some reason. But in a recent interview with Kobayashi, he mentioned that the remake will retain the spirit of the original game and that he has taken the harsh criticism of Resident Evil 6 into consideration. Do you believe this to be true, despite the fact that the previous interview we talked about earlier, he mentions that he doesn't like horror and he strives to make Resident Evil for casuals? I think either way, he's just going to find a way to fuck that up if this is the case, because if he doesn't like horror, then isn't the essence of Resident Evil like horror, and why they strayed off the beaten path is why we have things like we have now, which is Resident Evil 6, which is Michael Bay the movie. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
When, going back to that interview really quick, when you see that interview, it just seems like he just wants to make Michael Bay action set pieces, and it's like, that's not what the fans want, and you're not listening to that, Kobayashi. And this is why I said earlier, I think he needs to step down and let Koji Oda take his place. But as far as like the, what you were saying earlier too, we brought up that, why isn't he taking the criticisms of like the remake and Revelations 2 per se, considering that those are games that are closer to what Resident Evil 2 should be. And I definitely agree with that. Considering that he wants to take the criticisms of RE6, that could mean a number of things, because he doesn't really go into much detail as to what criticisms. He could just mean control schemes, per se. And in that sense, then okay, fine. If you're just looking at the controls, it's not really too much of a big deal at that point. But if you're talking about like how the story was set up and the environments and things of that nature, no, you just stay away from RE6.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, playing devil's advocate, we don't know exactly what is looking at for the criticism.
That is
yeah,
true.
there are numerous criticisms for RE6 though, but we don't know exactly what he's aiming for.
He could just be taking criticisms from Leon's campaign in particular.
Yeah, well, this is like low divergent, but in general, for every single campaign, chapter 3 onwards suck.
Oh yeah, I have to agree with that, but it might just be that that's what he means. We just don't know.
Man, I'm just gonna say, on record, on air, fuck Jake's campaign. Fuck Jake's campaign. Seriously? What
I
the
like punching things with Jake.
More like cancer? That thing was horrible. Fucking vehicle segments. One hit kill vehicle segments. Trash.
Yeah, the punching things though were pretty fun.
Yeah, the end boss was fun, but other than that, I don't think that's the best outlet to take criticism from. If anything, like I said, take what worked with Remake 1 and improve it. Simple as that. What about you, Dark?
Well, here's the thing. His name could not be more fitting for this scenario because this is essentially his Kobayashi Maru. He's in a definite no-win scenario with this. He has said he's taking criticism, but the problem is you're going to have a lot of fans that are going to look at that, and when we get that final product, he's either going to take the criticism as, all right, we need to make it more like the older games, and you're going to have a lot of the newer fans or those casual fans that he mentioned saying, oh, he gave in to the nitpickers, I'm not going to get this game. Or if he takes criticism in terms of like you've mentioned, aspects of it, there's going to be a lot of fans who say, well, he didn't listen to us at all. What were we expecting? Well, I'm not going to bother with this game. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, even if he takes criticism, I don't know if this will go well either way.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna cross out question 31 because it does we're already kind of talking about that. Like Resident Evil Remake HD and Resident Evil Revelations 2 were two of several Capcom titles that pulled them out of depth. So you'd think that instead of taking criticisms from 6, they would take criticisms from Revelations 2. And I've seen a lot of people say that Revelations 2 is, or just Revelations in general, is garbage, and I don't think it's bad. I think it's pretty accurate to what Resident Evil should be at this point in time. Yeah, admittedly, Revelations, especially 2 in particular, have a lot of problems that could be ironed out, but it is a step in the right direction in terms of comparing it to like 5 and 6. So I think that he's in that position, like you were saying, Dark, where like if he does what the fans want, the actual fans that have been supporters of this franchise since '96, then he'd be doing a good thing. However, he'd be getting flack from those casual fans that he himself has pretty much brought to the franchise because he wanted to create this divide. Them saying that, no, we need to have more action-oriented Resident Evil games, and it makes more sense for the series to be action-based. And, that's where we come into positions where we see Umbrella Corp, but...
Deja vu on that segment there.
Yeah, deja vu on that. But I guess we can move on. We are on question 31. We're about a few more questions before we finish this, like about 5 more. So it's not too long. But when the trailer for the Final Fantasy VII Remake dropped, there were fans that loved it and there were fans that hated it. How do you think the Resident Evil fans will react to a Resident Evil Remake 2 trailer?
Like I said before, it's a remake. People are going to be disappointed regardless.
Yeah, so you can't please everyone.
Nope, that's you to make the best product possible, and well, hope for the best.
Yeah. What about you, Dom?
I'm gonna say that, just like Brandon said, it's gonna be hard to please everyone in that sense. But I think, even the people that are, excited about it, I think they're gonna be somewhat disappointed. Even if, maybe they're not gonna be disappointed by the trailer, but I think definitely that the game itself, after they've seen all the trailers, maybe they're super hyped for the trailer, and then, when they get the game themselves, it's like, okay, it's a good game, but it's not exactly how I imagined it to be, and I think I overhyped it. So the best thing I would say is, don't overhype the game, because if you overhype the game, it's just not going to live up to the expectations you make it out to be when, looking at those trailers. Because I think the trailers they're made to hype people up, sure, but try not to overhype it, because otherwise when you get that final product, I don't think it's going to be as good as you made it out to be when looking at those trailers.
Also,
that's not to say...
Oh, go ahead.
I'll finish up really quick. That's not to say that, those trailers, you shouldn't look at them and say, like, okay, well, why didn't we see some of those things from the trailers? No, that's just saying that you shouldn't look at the trailers and assume that it's going to be, like, perfect like those trailers make it out to be.
So, we kind of said some of the same things yesterday, but I'm just suggesting this. Are you saying that basically people should have set expectation for this?
No, I'm saying that if they have set expectations, don't try to go into it and say, like, okay, it's going to be absolutely perfect. This is Capcom we're talking here.
Yeah, that is true.
You should expect them to mess up. So, if anything, if you have expectations, expect them to mess up on something. I would say that, if anything, at the very least, expect a good product, but don't try to expect, like, the end-all, be-all, the second coming of, Resident Evil at this point. I would say that you should expect a good product, but not expecting anything that will live up to what the original did. I think that the remake will be good, and I'll probably talk about this later as well. I think that the remake will be good, but I don't think that when people overhype it, I don't think it'll be as good as, people want it to be, at least.
Yeah, to go off on that, I do think that what I said earlier has a lot of pertinence. I think that this is not the golden age of Capcom anymore, where they used to just pump out gold for like months on end. This is definitely a different Capcom than what we experienced in the past. So when it comes to them making, excellent products all the time, I would definitely say, don't try to reserve your judgment until the game comes out. Don't try to overhype it, like Dom said. Otherwise, you will end up getting a product that will not meet your expectations. So I think reserve your judgment and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's not to say don't get excited whenever you see a trailer. No, that's just saying, like, don't expect a game that you're not going to get.
Yeah. Because they can really fuck it up easy with DLC and bad business practices. I mean, that game could be ruined easily.
I would say expect DLC, because Capcom can't go without a game that doesn't have DLC.
Oh, I know. But if it gets, like, super ridiculous, like campaigns getting cut out, that's when it's bullshit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, oh, now you have to pay for,
that version of it.
I know, I'm just saying, but, like, now you have to pay for A and B scenarios, and just, like, no.
Alright, since Brandon can't keep his panties on, I think we need to move to question 32.
Oh, did they have anything to say about 31, though?
Yeah, did you guys have anything to say? Alright.
What about Dark? I don't know if he, did you say anything, Dark?
I was just gonna say, because of I think with a lot of the cynicism you have towards Capcom, I got a feeling that no matter what, people are gonna look at and just receive it as who cares, or, well, I'm just gonna wait till the game comes out to make my decision.
Yeah, like I said, people really need to reserve judgment. If you haven't played it, give it a chance. But if it's not like looking good, or if you get like a feeling that something is off, then I definitely think that just reserve your judgment. And then if it's bad, then you can call it for what it is. If it's good, then you can call it for what it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we need to move on to question 32. Do you think that the zapping mechanic should come back for the remake? And did you have any issues with it in the original, which was Resident Evil 0, right?
No,
Yes.
2.
Oh, 2 original. Okay, so
Zapping mechanic was in 2. Not in
okay,
0.
okay. So if so, how could it be improved in the remake?
Zapping mechanic in 2? Me
Yeah,
and Revelations 2?
No, I'm talking about 2. That's what the whole mechanic is when you like pick up the side pack and the submachine gun. That was the zapping mechanic.
Oh,
where it
I
impacted
was
Claire's
thinking of the
campaign.
character switch. I really
No,
was.
No, you should be more specific with that though, because I didn't know that.
That's what a lot of people refer to that mechanic as the zapping mechanic. So yeah, I guess I can see where some people might be confused with that.
Yeah.
'Cause it does seem like switching. Yeah, I can see that.
So basically, I guess to summarize it would be doing stuff in certain scenarios that will affect the players in the next scenario. Like one good instance is the keycard recognition system, where you put in your fingerprint and you can't open that door in scenario A, but you can in scenario B when you put the other character's fingerprint. So seeing stuff like that for Resident Evil 2 Remake, how do you think it could be improved?
Well, first, I would definitely like to see that return. But for that fingerprint segment, needs a drastic change because it's pointless.
The room itself is, because when you go in there, all you get is like, I think you get like a submachine gun clip, and I
Yeah.
think doesn't the submachine gun on Resident Evil 2 doesn't it decrease your rank or something like that?
No,
Infinite ammo.
No, what it is that you get the submachine gun. I don't know about the room where you need the fingerprints, but in the case where you're still in the police station, you get the submachine gun and you get the side pack. And what you can do.
Real quick, the fingerprints one is the same thing. You get a submachine gun.
Yeah, you get
okay.
you get basically ammo for it, and my point was that if that gun reduces your rank, then it's pointless because why would you use it?
I don't think it reduces your rank. I think that.
No, infinite ammo does.
Yeah, infinite ammo does. Actually, I don't know if it does, but I know that what really reduces your rank is actually using a weapon like that. So, like, if you use that, then it will. Using health sprays will that reduces your rank.
Yeah.
Saving a lot. I think saving more than twice will reduce it drastically. And obviously death will reduce it too. But like as far as like how it worked, it was like, okay, so you have the submachine gun and you have the side pack. You take one and you leave the other for the character, or you can take both, but that'll drastically make the other character's campaign a lot harder. So I think that more scenarios like that where you have to pick and choose what items you want to take would be pretty cool to see. So, I think like maybe a scenario where it's like, okay, you can take either gunpowder A or you can take this shotgun part or something like that,
Yeah, and maybe I don't know, considering the fact that you can complete the game under multiple situations, maybe it'd be an incentive because you can take certain weapons with you and leave them, or you can just decide to go at it from just what you have in that character's campaign and you don't have to pick up anything. Like for the knife only runs, they have to, people like that stuff. So if they could figure out how to make those mechanics work around the combat, then I think it'd be really good for them to implement.
I would say that just one last thing to add on before I let Dark and Brendan go. I think that would be pretty interesting to see is maybe because nowadays you get trophies for games, and I think maybe it would be a pretty cool incentive for trophies or whatever is perhaps one run you have to pick up all the items, and in another run you have to actually leave them, and you're forced to leave all the items that trigger the zapping mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
That
that would
wouldn't
be
be hard at all.
good. What do you think about that, Dog Stalkers?
Well, I'm not sure how feasible it would be, but one thing I think that they could add is in Fallout 3, there was a room where if you completed Operation Anchorage, you got lots of gear and equipment, things like that. They could do something similar using this system so that there could be an area where multiple characters have to, let's say, touch the keypads. And there could be keys or something you get from different modes to where behind there you could have additional unlocked items, kind of a big room full of rewards for the player for completing everything.
Also, for the next question, Dom, I'm going to let you take over because I have to make a run to the bathroom, but I will be right back in like 2 minutes.
All right. So before we move on, do we have anybody else that wants to go? Or are we good? Alrighty. So, for number 33, Elza Walker costume or as a playable character in a separate mode, what do you guys think about that?
I'm fine with it.
What about you, Brendan? Brendan's right. Okay, I guess I can talk a little bit about the Elza Walker thing, because for anybody that's ever seen Resident Evil 1.5, you know that Elza Walker was the original Claire Redfield, so that was before they even implemented her. So I think a costume in reference to that character for Claire, or just having her as a playable character in like something like Mercenaries or something, would be pretty cool to see. Yeah, I don't know, like, why wouldn't Capcom bring this character back as, like, in a future game or anything like that? I think they're just missing out on opportunities when it comes to that.
Could be AU content as well.
Yeah, true. Like, it'd be some AU content, and it'd be some pretty interesting content at that.
Sorry, caught me.
Oh, that's cool. We're on 33. We're talking about an Elza Walker costume or just having her as a playable character in like a separate
She
mode.
needs to be our own character for sure.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, Capcom likes to put in minimal effort, so like, if not, I mean, could you see her as like a separate character in a separate game mode, or maybe as a reference to that character for Claire as an alternate costume?
Well, my costume part work most considering this is Capcom I'm talking about. But if we able to get a freaking new character in the series, I'm down for that.
Yeah,
I am back.
we're still on 33. We are talking about a possible Elza Walker costume or having her playable as a character, as her own character in a separate mode. What do you think about that?
You know what? Maybe it could be like a side quest sort of thing where it's like she's one of the surviving cops or something like that, and then
well, she was supposed to be like a racer or something like that.
I know she's supposed to be somewhat like Claire, but yeah, I think the only way they can factor her in is if she's either a cop or a civilian that is caught up in there, because Annette, or whatever the fuck her name is, Annette Birkin, she did say that she wanted Sherry to go to the police station, so I'm pretty sure someone else could have got the bright idea that the cops would protect them in case there was a zombie outbreak.
Yeah, that was a totally bright idea.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, everyone gets infected. So I'm pretty sure they could find a way to make her run into the police station, and maybe it could be like a side story or something. And then it ends on like a mystery note where you don't know where she is or where she'll turn up again. So I think that
that actually, and I know as much as like we all hate DLC, but it'd actually be pretty interesting if they decided to do, like we were talking about, like doing the Ada, where what happens to her type of scenario, a hunk, the fourth survivor scenario that actually turns into a campaign. What if they did like a 3-portion expansion where you get to see characters that were involved in the outbreak but were in the background.
Yeah, that, like I said, that'd be a nice like side story or something like that where they can do. I don't like to reference this game a lot, but I know this game had it often, which was Silent Hill Downpour, where it's just like a side thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the main missions at hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that'd be a nice way to introduce her, and then she could be like a Mercs character or something like that. People would probably want to play with her.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, this sounds totally gimmicky, but considering she's a motorcycle racer, I kind of like the idea of a mode where you can be on a motorcycle hitting zombies.
So, Dead Rising?
Resident Evil 6.
Dang it.
I guess, because I mean, I brought this up to Brandon too, and he was going like, this is Capcom, so in the sense that they would make her a playable character, it's kind of unlikely, but as an alternate costume where she's referenced with Claire's stuff, I don't know. Do you think that's likely? Because I do, per se, but I don't know. Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, I think the core should be the same. That Claire is still her her own self, while having this side character. Maybe if you run into her with Claire, it'll be a little Easter egg there where she's like, "Oh, I see you have a lot of similarities to me, Kappa," or something like that. I think that'd be pretty good.
Kind of walks off. What was with her outfit? What was with her hair?
Nah, they're gonna have that moment that was on Back to the Future Part 2 where both the Lorraines run into each other. Like, I'm young, I'm old. And then they all pass out.
Just out of curiosity, do you guys know the history of Elsa Walker and Claire?
No, elaborate.
Just to go through this briefly, originally when Resident Evil 1.5 was Resident Evil 2, Elsa Walker was supposed to be the second playable character. However, during development, when they decided to shift focus, and when Shinji Mikami told Kamiya that what his Resident Evil 2 it wasn't good, so they decided to have a character that was close to somebody from the original game. So they decided, why don't we have a relative of Chris Redfield? So that's how Claire Redfield came to be. So she replaced Elsa Walker.
Yeah. And I don't think that they should forget their history. I think that there's a lot of cool references they can make. So, yeah, that's definitely pretty good. They should bring Elsa Walker back.
I mean, even like we were talking about, just I know that this topic is kind of dragged down a little bit, but we talked a little bit about like bringing in like new stuff that wasn't in the original. Perhaps they could include the cut characters as like little like characters that you run into but you don't see again. Like I think Leon was supposed to run into a fellow co-worker there, but I don't know if they were supposed to survive or not. But they do have concept art of that character along with people like Elsa. And I know like Ada was originally supposed to be like a scientist at one point, so stuff like that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I definitely think that they should, pad the game with much content as possible. But let's move on to question number 34, which is Operation Raccoon City isn't considered canon. However, Umbrella Corps is for some reason canon and seems to have emblems of the USS and Spec Ops team as a part of the customization options. Do you think we'll see Capcom pull an ORC on the characters of the Resident Evil 2 remake? I hope not. Please, no. Cause that means that they're gonna fuck with the timeline.
I brought up earlier, like I'd like to see like some of the USS members get slaughtered off in that intro cutscene where you see Hunk.
Maybe, yeah, like just have them slaughtered or something, or don't put them in the main plot line specifically. Just like have them as background characters,
as mercenaries characters, like nothing relevant.
Yeah, nothing relevant.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, Resident Evil 3 has a file in the park that you pick up from a dead UBCS member that brings up In that game, they had UBCS members coming in and destroying evidence, so that's like the really the only thing that could really do with that is just say, oh, they were destroying evidence, but them actually meeting is not canon or something like that. But I would prefer the whole death thing personally. And then I think it was Darkstalkers, you brought up like a whole thing where like, what if they had or maybe it was you, Ren, where they have the Spec Ops, maybe they'll have those characters get killed off too by that tyrant, perhaps.
Yeah. Like,
That's Ren.
yeah, have them killed off by the tyrant or something, because there's a big battle at, like, the end of Resident Evil 3 and the Dead Factory where all the bodies are everywhere. Maybe show, like, more dead bodies, whatever, because what we're under the impression of is when you're in the police station is that mostly everyone is dead. So after you go on that short crusade of the survival run, you basically run into like maybe one or two characters that's important, and that's it. Everyone else is just Ripperino. So I assume that they should do stuff like that where if they're gonna reference these guys, at least have them dead, or at least have them like in the fight for like Raccoon City when, you know, everyone is like trying to fight to stay alive.
Right, like if anything, the only thing that should be referenced is like either, you know, one team is out there to destroy evidence while another team is trying to gather up evidence so they know how to, you know, cure the virus and things of that nature. Because if I'm not mistaken, they do have a cure, and it is brought up in one of the CGI movies as well. So things like that would definitely make a lot more sense than say, hey, all of your favorite characters run into these shit tier characters.
And then Operation Raccoon City 2 was born.
Oh god, you know they actually wanted to do an Operation Raccoon City 2.
They can fuck off.
Let Leon kill them all, please.
Yeah, they can fuck off with that, but moving on to the last question, which is question number 35. What are your expectations for Resident Evil Remake? I will keep my reply short and to the point and crystal clear. Please be good. That's all I want. I said this in the last recording. Please be good. What are our expectations for the Resident Evil 2 remake? Please be good.
Yeah, be good and give us RE3 remake.
Agreed.
Oh, hey, look who's back.
You got back right on the final question.
I know. I feel so bad now.
Oh man. But
can we let Brian answer a few questions and then we'll leave?
I can let him answer the last three, I guess.
The last three, yeah. We'll make them short and to the point. Basically, one question is Elza Walker as a costume or a playable character in a separate mode, yay or nay?
Elza Walker. I can't quite remember who that is.
She was supposed to be Claire Redfield until they changed her all the way completely to be related to Chris. So that character basically was like a prototype for Claire Redfield.
If they can give her a decent backstory and not make her the modern versions of a strong female character, I'm good. Like they can go. That is not what I said.
We just briefly we were just talking about how like you know, what could work is like having her as like a separate side story. And we did also mention that like a possible like Ada and Hunk campaign, the Ada campaign just being reworked from Umbrella Chronicles, and Fourth Survivor just being changed to being much longer, and rather than just being a point A to point B scenario.
They need to do it because we still don't know who Hunk is.
Yeah. Like, and things like that. So we thought, like, and then I brought up, as much as we hate DLC, maybe this can be like 3 like DLC expansions or whatever that are shorter than the main campaign but are long enough to where they feel justifiable to, you know, to be their own thing.
Yeah.
And then we went to question 34, which is, you know, since Operation Raccoon City isn't canon, you know, it is an Umbrella Corps, and they have emblems of the Spec Ops team and the USS and the customization option. So basically, what do you think if they put in ORC characters in the Resident Evil 2 remake?
That is something that would actually make sense, because given who all could have survived, and besides just Hunk, is like, because the Resident Evil 2 cutscene where you see Hunk and the other guys, like, it was just them two. It was like, it could have been just them, especially if they knew chances are that virus would get out. But that's just me, though. Like, Raccoon City to me could have been a good idea, but it was executed in a very flawed manner.
Yeah, I actually brought that up too. Like, they should just have them kill off the characters, and the only character I wouldn't want to see get killed off is Vector, because I feel like there could be like a student-teacher kind of dynamic between him and Hunk. But
Right.
outside of that, I know Ren brought up earlier, like, there's a tyrant in RE3 that you see where he kills off all the U.S. soldiers. So what if they like tied that in with like the Spec Ops soldiers from that game? So
Yeah, because they tried to do it in Raccoon City, but it came off very wonky.
So, and the last question was, what are your expectations for Resident Evil 2's remake?
As long as Capcom actually pays attention to what fans are saying, then it should be good. And by God, if Capcom screws this up, they're done.
Damn. That's like
Or
the
they
nail
should
in the
be.
coffin.
It might as well be.
well, I think it's just me and Dark that need to go, so I'll let Dark Suckers go.
Pretty much I'm in the same boat as anyone else. Just make sure it's a good game.
And then, as far as like I'm concerned, like, yeah, I agree. I want a good game, but I think what I really want to see from this is not only like a Resident Evil 3 remake. I just want, I hope Capcom learns from this, and I hope they see that, like, oh hey, people actually like the survival horror thing. Maybe we should like start making Resident Evil a survival horror, and make action games that aren't tied to Resident Evil, or if we do, they're just strictly side stuff that's not considered canon. So hopefully that's a thing, because obviously they're probably never going to stop making action RE games, but hopefully that's just something that's strictly for side stuff and not for the mainline series. So
Yeah.
I hope that they learn from that stuff. And then I just, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm expecting a decent game. I'm expecting a game that, doesn't necessarily live up to my expectations, but it's not necessarily a bad game. That's what I'm expecting.
Indeed.
I just hope it's good. I hope for the best. So, does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up here?
No, I
Yes,
think
are we finished yet?
Alright, when's the buffet? I want a fucking fish sandwich. So, I'm going to close out. It's been great. I'm sorry that on short notice we had to get this re-recorded, but we had a lot of audio issues for the last one, so it wasn't quite great because of that. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. So, again, I think this came out well. So, you can find me at Twitter at RenOperative_. You can find me at YouTube at Renegade Operative. I probably will be uploading some reviews and thoughts and first impressions. I've been playing a lot of Dark Souls, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about that, Dark Souls 3, and I'm gonna give my impressions probably next week. So, for the outros, Mr. Brian, where can we find you?
You usually find me on Twitter. That's about it. I do good fan fictions, not bad ones, because I actually study writing. So if anybody wants to test my stuff out,
Netflix.
shut up. If anybody wants to see any of my writing skills, you can check some of that out. And as always, it's the Silver Angel 627, aka Milk Dud Artist, keeping it chocolatey and 100 and silky smooth.
And you can
Y'all
find
be
him
safe.
on
67
Twitter.
plus 2.
You can find him on Twitter at BrianWord1. So
That too.
yeah, that too. So, Mr. Brandon, outro
okay.
time.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at ArcadeMagic514. And as usual, you can catch me on the TCP, the episode discussion, the By Devils podcast.
And
Same
you
old,
can-
same old.
You can catch him being a zombie.
Yep. I'm fucking tired.
I knew you were. I knew from the sounds of it. But Mr. Darkstalkers, where can we find you?
Just on Twitter at Darkstalkers47.
Awesome. And last but not least, the co-host of the TCP and the host of the Bio Devils podcast, Mr. Bio Devil Dom. Where can we find you, good sir?
And before I go with that, I just want to say that also for this discussion, we did add in a few questions, so it's actually better than the original recording. But that said, you can find me on Twitter at Twitter and YouTube as biodevil_Dom. You can find me on Twitch as Dom241996. And basically what I do is when I'm not on Twitter, I do videos on various different topics. I'm actually working on a impressions video for Vampire Hunter D on PlayStation 1 and Mitsurugi Kamui Hike, which was recently released on PS4. And on Twitch, I do various different streams. I'm going to be streaming this weekend for Dark Souls 3 for a little bit. It's separate from our challenge Deprived Run. And also we got a podcast this Saturday on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check all that stuff out.
Yeah.
You're ready to die in Dark Souls.
And there's a TCP
I've been
podcast
ready.
on Friday as well. So, yeah, pretty good. So, we are concluding. This is the end of the recording for the Resident Evil 2 episode discussion. I hope you all had fun. And we will see you guys next time. Later.